again
All right.
because he's not getting the invite.
I'll get it for him 1 second here. You know what? I think I know why.
Mike Heika just reported Stars Senators have agreed to a Spezza deal, awaiting trade call for confirmation.
Wow.
Hearing 3 forwards and a draft pick. That's Mike Heika from the Dallas Morning News.
That would be obviously true then, because Mike knows what's going on there. Wow.
Well, the Senators are going for Connor McDavid. Thank you very much.
Well, that's a good way to start. Actually, I was recording at the point, so if you just joined us, the show's going. Eklund, this is trade deadline day. Hello, hockey world. I am Eklund, and you are watching the trade deadline UFA show, and that's my game face voice for now. I don't know why it says blooper in the background. That's once in a while. Oh, that's that on that TV show. Sorry. That's Don Cherry's Rock'em Sock'em Hockey up there behind me for your entertainment. And that's Miracle down below there. So there you go. Yeah, so here you go, right? I mean, we have just launched in. We are right now joined by Ty Anderson in Boston, the ghastly Ty Anderson, I might add.
Oh, yes. Very true. How's it going?
Right, Ty, who is hipper than all of us put together. And then here's Dan in on Long Island. Dan Petru, how are you, Dan?
Actually, from the gorgeous state of Connecticut.
Oh, you're in Connecticut, yes. Well, you covered
Close enough. I can see Long Island.
That's cool. Yeah, just like, others can see. Anyway.
And it smells like outside.
And from scenic and beautiful Buffalo.
And from scenic and Buffalo. Buffalo, Boston, and the island represented so far. And, we had Paul step on for a second, but he's back probably on the Iditarod again. So, yeah, so Paul McCann will be in. We've got Bill Meltzer coming in. And Bill Meltzer we need right now, Bill, because we have word. My hand's way too close to the camera when I do that.
I'll text
out
him.
of proportion to my body. It's called forced perspective. Okay, because apparently the Dallas Stars have made a trade for Jason Spezza, who wasn't willing to go to Nashville but was willing to go to Dallas. Anyway, just throwing it out there, just not to be sarcastic or anything. But yes, he's on his way to the Dallas Stars, where he will play with
Jamie Benn.
Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin, a good friend of Ty Anderson's. And yeah, so we are. I know you and Tyler Seguin hit the scene out there. You don't have to tell me. I saw the photos. I have Instagram.
It's true.
Okay. So yeah, so the UFA Day is just kicking off right now, and we're taking Spezza off the table right away, which is actually a nice thing because there's so much else to focus on today. I didn't want to talk about Jason Spezza all day. Jason Spezza in Dallas. Ty, what do you think?
I think it's a good move. I mean, they need someone to back up Seguin, and in the event that he goes down or anything like that, step up. I think it's a good move for them, and they need to really make some moves, I think, to stay afloat and prove that last year wasn't a fluke. That is a great division, and it's not going to get any easier for them. So I think that was a great move, and I mean, you saw what they did last year. They pushed the Anaheim Ducks to the absolute brink. And then the Ducks had that wild comeback, but I mean that was a great series and really showed that they can be something moving forward.
I'm with you, and I actually picked Dallas last year to really do better than they did. Looking at their talent just alone, I thought they were solid. They made great, and Jim Nill's a really good GM. Have we seen nothing else but that so far? That there's a reason Jim Nill, people wanted him to be a GM for the last decade, but he stayed in Detroit learning his trade, and now now Jim is like, man, what a great pickup. I mean, probably the best pickup the Stars could have had was Jim Nill, and this is a good one though, Dan.
Absolutely, they're going to be an exciting team to watch now. They add some depth down the middle there, and obviously they still have some questions in the back end, and they need some health and goaltending. Lathan is coming off a nice year, but he's never been a beacon of health. But boy, you talk about the firepower they add up front now. There's some nice depth on that team, and they're going to be exciting to watch next season.
I'll say they already were, and this is
absolutely.
This is a team that in Dallas, I know it's funny. We have a really hard time getting Dallas people on the site, just because it's just a market that isn't really invigorated, and But if they're not invigorated today, Mike, I don't know what to do. This is about as good as it gets, right?
I'm sorry, Echo. What was that?
Invigorated Dallas.
I couldn't hear you. You drifted that.
No, I was just saying the Dallas fans must be fired up today.
Well, yeah, I mean now you have a 1-2 punch of Sagan and Spezza up the middle. I mean that's pretty good. I mean even if you can't re-sign him for a long term after his current deal ends, he's got 1 year left, $7 million cap hit. But I'm sure one of the considerations for Dallas was that the amount of money on his last year was only $4 million, so they get a larger cap hit and less paying out of pocket. But it gives them two pretty good offensive centers. A team that made the playoffs last year. I mean, this is a good move. Now it depends on what they give up, and we'll find that out in a couple minutes. According to the reports, it's three players and a draft pick. So we'll see what players it is. And if it's not like some of their better prospects, a kid that they drafted in the first round a couple years ago, Jamie Alexiak, who played really well in the Calder Cup final and the Calder Cup playoffs. If they give up guys like that, then maybe long term it's not a great thing, but I think for the short term it's a great move.
It's got to be something pretty significant because they were a lot of the players that we saw going for James Neal were going originally for Jason Spezza, so from Nashville. So this has got to be something pretty darn significant, I would say. It's nice.
Or Cody Aiken, maybe one of those guys.
The report out of TSN right now is that Alex Chason is part of the package going there, along with Alex Guptill and Nicholas Paul.
Yep, and a second-round pick in 2015 for Spezza and Ludwig Karlsson, as per Mike Heika. So Chason had a disappointing year after having a really good small window 2 years ago. He scored I think it was 6 or 7 goals in 12 games or something like that, and didn't really flourish last year. And he started the season, I believe, with Sagan and Jamie Benn, and then ended up moving on down on second and third line. I'd like to get Bill Meltzer's opinion on this, so I'm going to text him and get him to come on the show.
Get his butt out of bed. I'm just kidding. Bill is out of bed at 3 in the morning. You ever see Bill? Bill puts his posts up at 3 a.m. every day.
Jason was a player that the Stars refused to put in the Sagan deal too. So this is interesting. I think a year later they move him. That's how the Bruins ended up getting Riley Smith. They had interest in Riley Smith, obviously, but they really loved Chason. They really wanted him in Boston too. So this is interesting. A year later.
Wow, that's good stuff. Is he related to Steve Chason, the old Detroit Red Wing?
I don't believe so.
I'm just wondering.
I think it's spelled.
Look up.
That makes me feel pretty old to say that, but yes, he wasn't that old. I mean, anyway, yeah, he's probably too young actually to have a son. That's that age. Anyway, so I really appreciate it, Brian Murray. I've never said this before, but thanks for getting this out of the way before noon because now we don't have to worry about this one as everything else is flying on here. And I wonder if we're going to get the same thing, Mike, from your buddy up in Toronto. Is Dion Phaneuf going to get traded before noon, and is he going to go to the New York Islanders, Dan?
Let's hope so, because he would be the best defenseman instantly on that team.
Well, I mean, I was very intrigued.
So would Ty, Dan. Ty would be the best defenseman instantly on that team, so let's keep it there.
He's got soft hands.
5'7" puck mover, baby.
Again, yes, so does Ty.
Thomas,
all right, Mike, so what are your thoughts on the Islanders?
Well, I mean, it would make sense. The Islanders, a trade between the Leafs and the Islanders involving Phaneuf would make sense because of the Islanders' current situation next year, not having a first-round pick. I think they're going to go all out to improve dramatically this year to at least be a playoff contender. I think they're going to spend some money. And that may be against Charles Wong's better judgment, but I think they're going to try to spend some money, bring in some talent. The question is, in this deal, is what comes back Toronto's way. Me and Dan were talking before the webcast, and I know that Josh Bailey's name has been mentioned in potential trade rumors regarding not the Leafs, but just on overall. And he might be somebody that intrigues the Leafs because he's sort of that untapped potential that I think if he was playing with someone like Nazem Kadri or Tyler Bozak, maybe he could find his offensive footing. But I think it would have to be more than just that. I think it would have to be probably one of the Islanders' better prospects. If not a Ryan Strome, then somebody like a Griffin Reinhart. Because the Leafs, I mean, in spite of the fact that Phaneuf is making $7 million a year, in spite of the fact that he's signed for 7 years, you can see by the market right now. If Matt Niskanen is getting $6.5 million, then Dion Phaneuf is going to be highly sought after if the Leafs are willing to trade him. And according to what you're saying, it's possible that it's going to happen. And I'm very intrigued to see what
it could happen. It could happen in the next 15 minutes, actually.
Well, that would be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, another thing I was just told is Mike Santorelli, who I think is a good player, the Vancouver Canucks player. They have made absolutely no effort to bring him back. You know, he wasn't qualified.
Well, he got injured. I mean, he was injured.
But still, I mean, you know, I don't think that's a permanent thing. So.
Well, no, but and the funny thing was and I'm not saying that Mike Santorelli was a key factor in them having their downfall late in the year, but he got injured right around the time the Canucks had their big slump, and he was a very effective third, fourth line depth guy who really fit what Tortorella was trying to do in Vancouver. And once he got hurt and a few other factors happened there, they fell back, and we know what happened after that. So, you know, I'm sure there's some teams out there that are looking for depth forwards. If they're convinced that he's healthy, are going to take a flyer on him. Another guy who I think a team will take a flyer on, and I was very surprised that the Sabres did not qualify him, was Corey Conacher, who was in the mix for Rookie of the Year 2 years ago. I mean, he had a great year at Tampa Bay, got traded in the Ben Bishop deal, failed miserably in Ottawa, was waived by the Senators, picked up by the Sabres. He played at Canisius College as a local kid. I think he's from Hamilton, Ontario. So, you know, all the factors were there to keep this guy around, especially with a team that has such lack of depth up front. And they did not qualify him. So I think a team out there might take a flyer on Corey Conacher and be very thankful that they did.
Mike, he looks like the perfect Guard Snow reclamation project.
Yep.
If you look at Conacher, how he played with Stamkos and St. Louis for that time there, he was outstanding. So I'm thinking, well, you put him with Tavares and Oposo, maybe, high-end talent. He could be someone that might fit that role. Obviously, they have some pretty good internal options there, but that name, when you said that name yesterday, I saw that tweet. I was like, yeah, that really sounds like a Guard Snow special right there.
Yeah, and I think, in this situation right now, I think you can get him for a song, and based on Garth Snow, that's always a key factor. It's like, if you can get him for $550,000, I think Garth will say, oh, good.
Yeah.
So.
Garth Snow has a lot of songs, too, by this point, because he's been getting a lot of players for songs for a while. The one thing I would say also, Mike, and throw this out there, I'm trying to get Tony Dino on. Sorry, Tony, we're going to get you on in 1 second. But I'm doing my best to do 3 things at once, monitoring my various things. So one thing I'll say about that I've heard is there's a really interesting thing going on with Calgary, Buffalo, and to a degree Florida, where these teams are saying, sure, we'll take your Vinny LeCavaliers, we'll take your so-and-so, but, we also want a second-round draft pick next year, or maybe even a first, depending on how much. So, there's going to be these teams that are just loaded up with, welcome to the NBA, it's just, it really is lame. I think it's there used to be, I swear, and it's funny, I got this discussion with Kevin Allen yesterday, there used to be a rule in the NHL that you couldn't make a non-hockey trade. Like, you couldn't actually throw a trade out there. You couldn't trade Gagne and someone else for a 6th-round draft pick. You couldn't do that. The NHL had, some sort of... And I was talking to Kevin yesterday. He's like, yeah, I do remember that vaguely, but... it's Jan Levine's stealing. Yeah, so... he says, I do remember that at one point, but and then we talked about the Kolzig trade, Mike, the one that we know that happened, but that was allowed, remember? So it wasn't nixed. That did happen. Kolzig made that Tampa trade. So
it was allowed to happen, and then after the fact, the league penalized the Maple Leafs for circumventing the salary cap. They penalized them a 4th-round pick, which is what they got in the deal. So I think they were trying to dissuade teams from being able to make those deals. But I think
how is this Gagne to Phoenix trade different than that? This is the most absurd thing.
I think with the new CBA Act, I think what the factor is that with the new CBA and with the that these deals are going to be allowed. They're allowed They're allowed in the NBA, and I think they're going to be allowed now. Now, from the point that you just made earlier, I heard a report yesterday, I think it was Darren Drago that reported that Brad Treliving, the Calgary GM, made offers on the draft floor, of taking cap room back from a couple teams, and the price that he was asking for was a first-round pick, was asking for the 7th pick in the draft or the 12th pick in the draft. I think this is part of the landscape now in the NHL. You're going to be allowed to do this.
I agree. It's obviously the case. Jan Levine joining us, by the way. Hello, Jan.
Hey, how are you?
Jan's in the witness protection relocation program. Speaking to an undisclosed location.
Yeah.
Jan looking a lot like Billy Joel today, I have to say.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, you got that Billy Joel thing going on. I've never seen you from this angle before.
Not many people have.
It's all good. No, it's fine.
Don't bad talk Billy Joel. He's got a banner at the Nassau Coliseum, baby.
No, I know. Tell me about it, man.
One of the few banners there that's recent.
I saw Billy Joel before you were alive, Ty Anderson.
It's definitely true.
No, I did. No, I mean, I saw Billy Joel when the Flyers were trying to eliminate the Islanders in a 7th game of a playoff series, but I was dating somebody and I had to go to the freaking Billy Joel concert instead.
One of my goals.
The days of VCRs.
One of my goals is to see Billy Joel at his monthly show at MSG, because apparently he's going to play every month at Madison Square Garden until he dies. So I'm going to go see him one of these days, hopefully before he shuffles his mortal coil.
That's going to be really cool for like the first 19 or so months. And then there's going to be like, well, I guess, why not? I mean, it's a really cool idea. I believe me, my wife listens to the Billy Joel channel the entire way down to the store, so I am not bad-mouthing Billy Joel.
Yeah, and the channel's now gone, so.
Is it gone?
Yep, it's gone. They got rid of it.
The up-on-4 is back, darn it.
Do you have a body in the trunk of your car, Jan? Just curious.
I'm actually at work.
I like it. No. So that's all right. I like this. This is good. An undisclosed location. All right, and we've got Paul in there as well. And I'm trying to invite you, Tony. I really am. I'm just going to Jan, what are your thoughts on the Spezza deal? And then I'm going to invite Tony while you talk.
I mean, personally, I don't think that they got a ton. I mean, the younger guys, Paul and Galiti, aren't bad, and Chason's a nice piece. But if you look at what you thought they were going to get for Spezza, in my opinion, they really didn't get a ton back by comparison.
Yeah, I agree.
And Pierre LeBrun makes a good point. This has got to be great news for Paul Stastny's representatives right now, because with Spezza gone and with Kessler moved, now Stastny is front and center in terms of teams that are looking to add frontline centers, and I bet you his price just went up.
Front and center of teams that want to add frontline centers, Mike. That's a good one.
There you go.
Yeah, he's got to be really happy right now. He's the only legit first line center available, and then Spezza's off the board before noon. He's got to be a happy camper right now.
Well, wait a second. Come on, Brad Richards is still a frontline center, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean,
I will refrain on commenting on that one.
If he's not a frontline center, he's at least a second-line power play point man. We'll give him that much.
At $5 million a year.
At $5 million a year. Yeah, he's not going to get that now. Ty, I mean, let's go back to Ginla for a second with you, Ty. This was a good fit. I mean, this was something that really I liked Ginla in Boston. It just seemed to make sense. I mean, it's almost as if it almost happened earlier. But, yeah, it seems like he was almost there another year. But Boston's just out of money, right? I mean, Boston's in trouble here.
Yeah, this is bad news for them. They knew this could be, this could happen to them when they did sign that contract. $4.5 million in potential bonuses. He met 3.7 of that on top of Krug's bonuses and Hamilton's performance bonuses as well. So they got about $4.8 million in cap penalties wreaking havoc on this year. So you take that into account with Mark Savard's money that will be put on long-term injured reserve, and they still only have about less than $8 million to sign a fourth-line forward, re-sign Krug, re-sign Smith, and bring Ginla back. And it's just not going to happen, I don't think. And it's sad because it was such a great fit, and this was a natural fit for him for sure.
Yeah, it was. And he seemed to like it there too, and really fit into the whole scene.
Yeah, he's a player that he spent a decade and a half in Calgary, And he took a lot from him to move his family here to Boston, but he did. And he loved it here. And I thought what was great about that line is that with Iginla there, Lucic and Krejci didn't take nights off. They knew that they had this guy who was going to be hounding them all night if they played sluggish, if they played sloppy. He was the guy that would motivate them, whereas Nathan Horton really wasn't that kind of guy mentally. So, I mean, the results, I think they spoke for themselves, too. These guys were amazing at getting in deep and just beating up defenders and letting Krejci work his magic in the middle. So this is going to be a tough loss for them. It's not ruled out yet, but honestly, you might as well rule it out because this is going to be a very, very tight fit. He's going to have to take about $1 million and then load up the bonuses again. So this is going to be a tough fit, and I just don't think they can manage it.
I wonder though. I wonder if he'll do it because if you're a Ginla and you've moved your family there and you've made your money and you've got a chance to play for a team that'll win. I mean, we have heard a lot of rumors going around. We've had Colorado's going hard after him. Colorado's a good team, but then again, that's a lot of traveling. It's a Western Conference team again, and Colorado's an interesting team too because although they had an incredible turnaround. Have you noticed that Patrick Waugh is suddenly acting like they've been like a Stanley Cup team for 6 years and they haven't gotten over the hump, but he's making moves like that? I mean, some of them are a little bit nuts. I hear Robidas is coming in. That's a pretty much a set deal. That he's going to be signing there. So I mean, that's a 36-year-old player. Briere comes in. I like that move, but still, Ty, what are your thoughts on Colorado, real quick?
I think it's interesting. I think if you're going to lose Stastny, you got to replace him with more than Danny Briere at this point in his career. And I love Briere, but that's just how it is, I think. And again, it would be an interesting fit, but I just don't. I don't know. It's similar to what you were saying with talking about the Eastern Conference versus the Western Conference. It's almost like the NBA too, where you have an easier road to the finals in the Eastern Conference than you do the West. Right. The West is going to be very tough to battle through 3 rounds and then go to the finals. So I think in the East, Jarome Iginla does have the best chance to win with Boston. But, I mean, a team like Colorado is interesting because of the youth, because of guys like Nathan McKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog. Put him on the wing with that line. That'd be pretty interesting, I'm not going to lie.
That would be fun.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tougher road in the West, and the Avs are a team that they still need some improvements, I think, through free agency and through some trades even.
And they need a defenseman. I mean, at the end of the day, look, they still haven't done that. I mean, Robidas is something, but he's not the guy they really need. I mean, he's a solid defenseman. We're also joined by Tony Dean now in the middle of the country in Minnesota. How are you, Tony?
I'm very good, sir.
Awesome. You have some experience with Colorado. Sorry.
And we get them to start out the season in a home and home. Too,
That's right. So. Yeah, I mean, this is and the Wild are going to be interesting today as well. Interesting. No, just my bell. It's broken. But there it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
Interesting is something that if I had money, okay, and I could hire interns today to do one thing, I would have them track Sportsnet and TSN and XM and see how many times people say the word interesting, because that's why I have this little pet peeve with it. It'll be interesting to see how many times they say interesting.
Here's an interesting thing from ESPN Pierre LeBrun, who says that Dallas only went after Spezza after being turned down by Joe Thornton. Thornton basically blocked a deal to Dallas, but by using his no-move clause.
All right. Well, see, that's bizarre. A little bit. I mean, they're very different players. I mean, you're not talking about just because they're both centers. It's not like I think I'm not going to get Joe Thornton, so yeah, I'll go get Jason Spezza. I mean, they're totally different kinds of centers. One's a flat-out scorer, one's a playmaker. I got some. Dan Boyle is probably going to Toronto. Yeah, I've just got texted that as well. So we'll see on that one.
That would make sense if a Phaneuf deal happens. I mean, I don't know if they can pay both. Say that again, Sure.
Yeah, I agree. If a Phaneuf deal has to happen. Jan, I muted you a little bit. Oh, Dan went away. Jan went away. Shoot. Hope I didn't just.
He'll be back.
He just got fired.
Yeah, Dan, you're out. Dan, you're out here. Tony, could you put your lower third on? How you do that is the bottom left-hand side. There's a Hangout toolbox. Click on that and see if you can create your little thing that we've done. So when you click on that, you'll see the lower third thing that hangs out at the top. Play around with it for a second, and I'll come back to you. We'll talk to Minnesota.
Well,
Um,
one of the teams that's going to be interesting today, and you maybe get the impression of other people on the webcast is Buffalo, because Buffalo has so much cap room just to get to the cap floor. I mean, I spoke to a Buffalo reporter on Saturday, and who indicated that they may be re-signing Steve Ott. They may be in the mix to get back Matt Molson, who was there and traded at the end of the season. There have been some reports of them kicking tires on Brian Giunta, who's from Rochester.
Yeah, I heard that today too. Giunta is suddenly a hot commodity. Like someone's going to give Giunta I heard the Islanders with Giunta too. Someone's going to give Giunta 2 years, which to me is crazy. I mean,
Brian Rolston. For me personally, it sounds like Brian Rolston all over again.
Yeah, I mean, Giunta's a good player. I mean, you saw him a lot, Ty, and he's a good player. He's a solid. In the regular season, he had a great year, but he kind of did the Jaromir Jagr run out of gas last year. By the time he played you guys even, Ty.
Yeah, I thought he was one of their. I thought he was effective, but rarely did I notice him and say, "Wow, that was a great play by Giunta." I think his time is kind of he's getting past in the depth chart. Definitely in Montreal for sure, but elsewhere, I think. I mean, it's a weird situation because I think there are a lot of teams that have money to play with this year. As many teams as need to shed salary, there are teams that can pick up contracts. So you will see a team, I think, like the Islanders, like you said, or even Buffalo. They can throw money at this guy and hang on to what he's done in the past versus what he can do for you now, next year, and even a third year maybe.
Ty, that they can and they probably will because of their situation right now. And as Eck observed in the playoffs, Giunta is falling off pretty quickly. I mean, I think he still has something to contribute in terms of character and in terms of leadership. He's a good locker room guy. But, he's getting up there. He's in his mid-30s. He's seen better days. But right now, I think the Sabres, what they want to do is they want to instill, some leadership. They want to, teach some of their young players, how to be NHL players, be pros. But I also think in the back of their minds, they don't want to be good this year because they want to get Connor McDavid or Jack Eichel with one of the top picks in the draft. And I think they can accomplish both by adding – a marginal third-line guy like Giunta and basically tanking this year.
I got another one here, guys. It is looking more and more like Peter Stastny, along with his brothers Marion and Anton, will be centering a line this year in St. Louis. But we'll see. Paul Stastny, who's from St. Louis. And I know I remember one time talking to Andy Strickland, who's coached in the who kind of I think knows Paul pretty well. I think kind of grew up around him. Who said that, and this is not the only thing. I covered Paul Stastny in Vancouver for the U.S. Olympic team, and he is flat out one of the most intelligent hockey people I've ever been around. Like as far as players go, you just can't get a smart. I mean, obviously, I guess when you've got a father and two uncles that are NHL legends in their homelands, I mean. You're gonna be pretty smart, but he really knows his stuff, and is great on faceoffs. A great two-way player. Kind of a Kevin Allen yesterday on this show predicted he would be the highest paid player today, which is rare for what you would call a two-way player who actually at points during his contract wasn't tradable because he was making too much money, if you remember. I mean, so there's so many things about this that are strange, but I like Paul Stastny. Dan, I wanted to ask you something real quick. Then we're gonna go to Tony. As we get in, it's 11:30 right now, guys, which means that at any point TSN will be switching over from Wimbledon and showing their hockey preview. I guess they started late this year because of the hockey preview. That's what I have now on sport. Is the Sportsnet show on the NHL Network right now? Is that what's happening? Is that what's happening?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's an interesting thing too. But before we talk about that, let's talk to Dan. Dan, what the hell is wrong with P.A. Parento? I mean, this is what I want to know because he's before we go any further. I mean, here's a guy who had all. I mean, was rushed up. Came up, thought he was better than he thought he was better. Said he was better. Flat out, I need to play more, and now has been traded, and yet just twice in 3 years. What's going on with him?
Well, when he got to Colorado, he obviously got paid a lot. And he's put up some points, and the thing is, I don't think putting up points has been a problem for him throughout his career. He was very prolific in the minors. He had a couple of good years playing with Tavares. He had some productivity playing in Colorado, but I think it's everything else besides the points. His play, away from the puck. I used to always get very frustrated watching him because I always called it the Jason Blake syndrome. The drop passes and it's in the neutral zone, all these soft plays in the neutral zone, which would always cause the turnovers, and his possession stats were terrible with the Islanders. So I think right now he's a good player, probably making too much money, which made him expendable in Colorado if they want to bring in, some more salary to address their blue line. It's a pretty good trade, though, for Montreal because he can put up points. You put him with a couple talented players, I think he's going to be pretty productive. It's just everything not offensive involved. His play without the puck, I think, is the big question mark, and he makes too much money now. He almost went from a nice value, a good player with nice value, to a good player making too much money.
I'm going to sound like an idiot for a second, but is he French-Canadian or not? Like, I talked to somebody yesterday who said he was, but then somebody else said, no, he just sounds French-Canadian.
No, I think he is. It's Pierre-Andre.
I know, and it's a French-Canadian voice, but is he actually from? I don't know where he's from. But somebody told me that he wasn't actually French. I don't know. But I will say that I think his game will fit better with the Canadians than it has anywhere else. I mean, that's Absolutely. The one thing. That's the one place that will work. I mean, he reminds me a little bit of some other guys they have. Guys that I was always as a sort of like a quasi Canadian fan growing up. This is my least favorite version of them. I just have to say.
Yeah, I wonder why. Ak. I wonder why.
No, it's no. It's not just Michel Terry.
I just looked it up.
What was that?
He was born in Hull.
Well, therefore, yeah. So he's French Canadian. So, I'm sorry. Just missed that one. I mean, besides my disdain for Michel Therrien, at some point today during the day I will now be able to share with you some really good Michel Therrien stories, because some people aren't there anymore. So yeah, we'll talk about that later. But so anyway, but no, but this Canadians team is really is a good fit for PA Parento.
I agree.
If he can't make it there, he's screwed. I mean, there's nowhere else he can make it. This is his place. This has got to be a shot. So let's talk a little bit about, go around the panel a little bit about the concept of now those who aren't watching us, which, shame on all of you, who are watching TSN and Sportsnet, or, TSN in Canada or Sportsnet in the United States. I've gotten a lot of emails, as I thought I would, about the fact that, that the NHL Network is going to the Sportsnet show today versus the TSN show. Right. Now, this is obviously because of the deal that was signed and because Sportsnet has a deal next year. But when you compare insiders, versus Sportsnet, and this is, our buddy Josh Rimmer works at Sportsnet, and this is no knock on him. But, TSN's loaded up on insiders like no one's business here. So, and so the only way you can watch TSN is if you have it by some sort of other method. So, like I do. But there's different ways. So what are your thoughts on it? I mean, Ty, you don't get in Buffalo, Mike. You get these channels anyway, right?
No, I don't. We don't. I get Hockey Night in Canada on CBC as part of our local cable, but we don't get Canadian cable channels. So I'm reliant on the NHL Network to watch trade deadline coverage or games. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the guys at TSN do a pretty good job, and especially the insiders, Drager and McKenzie, and then Pierre LeBrun and a number of others. But it's going to be very intriguing to see. There you go. The Sportsnet guys with guys like Jeff Merrick and John Shannon, Kiprios, and Elliot Friedman coming up.
I'm a big fan of these guys.
So it's going to be. It will be.
I wonder if Rick Kern will be a guest on the Sportsnet trade deadline show today. Let's go to Paul. Do you have some news, Mike, first?
Yeah, Chris Johnston was reporting that the Calgary Flames are one of a few teams that are pursuing heavily Anaheim Ducks free agent goaltender Jonas Hiller. The Flames have they traded Rito Berra to Colorado. They have, of course, Okari Ramo as their starting goaltender. Have another goaltender, the Finnish goaltender Ortio, as their potential backup. I've heard them being in the mix potentially for James Reimer if the Leafs trade him and he's asked to be traded. But Hiller makes a lot of sense with Burke's connection to Anaheim. So we'll see if that comes to fruition.
Yeah, I go with that. Hiller is really kind of like the really undersold player, goalie. I mean, he's a hell of a goalie to be out there. I mean, remember it was this time last year that we all gave Team Switzerland a chance to to upset people because they had Jonas Hiller in goal. So it just fell out of favor really fast in Anaheim for just this whole weird bunch of circumstances. But I would take it back. Go ahead.
Renaud Lavoie from TVA is reporting that the top two teams in the running for Dave Boland are Florida and the St. Louis Blues. He does not mention the Leafs, which I think is indicative of Toronto not wanting to sign him to any longer than a 4 or 5 year deal. Let's talk about the goaltenders. Dan, you first, because I know that Yaroslav Halak was brought in by the Islanders. From what you're indicating, that the Islanders are going to be pursuing another goaltender for backup purposes, because last year, once Nabokov went down, their season went down the tubes.
Yeah, absolutely. I was told that they're going to aggressively pursue a solid backup goalie. They've talked to Peters, they've talked to Montoya, they've talked to Vokun. So they're looking to bring someone in who could be, a starting goalie if Halak gets injured, and he has been, he hasn't exactly been a rock back there in his career. He does get hurt from time to time. So I think that would be a smart move. And I've also heard they're looking to bring a goalie in for Bridgeport as well. The name that's going to float around to me a lot is Devin Dubnyk. So hoping to have someone down there as well in case there are injuries and they're bringing someone up, they can bring someone up that's not going to be a disaster like they went through last season. So right. Goaltending is definitely a top priority with them right now. And it's funny, you mentioned the Caps. It's puzzling with them talking about Hiller. They had Halak, and it doesn't seem like they ever made any attempt to sign him. And he's not a top tier goalie, but he's good enough. So it's interesting. I don't see much difference between Halak and Hiller, and now you just let Halak walk, and now you're talking to a guy like Hiller, and it seems like a very lateral move to me.
Now, Tony, the Wild's goaltending situation was sort of a hodgepodge last year. They bring in Brizgalov at the deadline because of the health situation with Harding and Backstrom being injured. Darcy Kemper did pretty good until he got hurt in the playoffs. Do you think Chuck Fletcher is going to pursue a goaltender in free agency, or do you think he's going to stick or try to get through next year with the 3 goaltenders he has on hand right now? Tony?
Can you hear us, Tony? I don't think you can.
We must be having a problem.
Yes, okay. Tony, go.
Ty, I know that with the Bruins, obviously Tuukka Rask, he's the number one and will always be the number one, at least for the next decade. Chad Johnson goes unrestricted because it sounds like they couldn't really afford to pay him, and now they're going to go with Nicholas Svedberg as the backup unless they go out and sign a veteran free agent. Do you think they're going to go with Svedberg?
I think so. Many thought that Svedberg was ready last year. He was up for one game. He played against the Nashville Predators. They won that game in overtime. He played really well. He's a sound goalie. He had some experience in the Swedish Elite League. Quite a strong, very talented goaltender. He took a bit of a step back this year in Providence. Many kind of considered the fact that maybe he was hoping for an NHL sort of shot, and once the Johnson signing happened, and then he won the job in training camp, even though Svedberg played well, that maybe there was a little bit of motivation issue there. But Svedberg is a very talented goaltender. He can come in and start you 30 games, much like an Anton Hudobin, sort of that role where if something does happen to Rask, you have that safety net there more than you did with Chad Johnson, I would say. I think Chad Johnson is an unbelievable backup goaltender if he's in the right system. I thought his cameo with the Coyotes was great. I thought last year he was probably the league's best backup goaltender. And I think he has a chance to make some actual money somewhere where he can be an insurance policy for an injury-prone goaltender. Obviously Carolina's off the market now, but I think a team like Tampa Bay would be a great fit for Chad Johnson. in the event that Ben Bishop is not the same goaltender that he was a year ago, and if he goes through any sort of injury woes like he did last year, I think Johnson would be a huge upgrade over someone like Anders Lindbach, for example. So I think that Tampa Bay would be a great spot for him. But Johnson did work himself out of Boston, basically. He worked himself to a way where he wasn't going to be re-signing here for $600,000.
Yeah,
so they bring in Svedberg for that same money.
Well, and then Toronto, I mean, like we were talking about with Reimer, Reimer's requested to be traded. There has been some talk about Winnipeg having interest in him. He's from Morweena, Manitoba, which is close to Winnipeg. If they do trade him, I mean, the name Marty Brodeur came up at the draft. That would be so weird to see Marty Brodeur, a guy that Maple Leaf fans have hated for years in the sense that he was a guy who beat them in a couple playoff series and prevented the Leafs from going further, being in a Leaf uniform. But his son is playing for the Guelph Storm next year in the OHL near Toronto, and that may be a reason why Brodeur goes to Toronto. Plus, Shanahan and David Clarkson are there, people that he knows from playing with them in the past. So that's a possibility. Mark Spector from Sportsnet.
Yeah, you know what? Don't say it because I had the same exact thing. And I was just about to say it, and I'm really mad at Mark Spector from Sportsnet.
Go ahead.
No, I like Mark a lot, but no, Alice Hemsky, is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah. No, Hemsky is coming close apparently to signing in Phoenix. Hemsky reunited with Gagne. Good times. That worked really well before. So let's see.
Well, one of the things that's going to be really interesting here, ring the bell, is since these players have been able to talk to teams for 5 days,
right,
you're going to probably see a bull rush of signings from noon till about 3 o'clock.
I've thought about that a lot. I've thought about this a lot, and in the past, I wish I was more better at math. But in the past, I remember situations where we have so many unknowns right now. There's a lot of times where you have a bunch of knowns, and right now there could be a bull rush of players, of certain players signing, but there's so many domino type players out there that teams don't know what to do with. There's going to be a lull. They're going to have a 12 to 12:45. I would guess 12:15 to 1 o'clock in there somewhere signing frenzy, but then we might not have anything till 3 or 4 because I think there's going to be a real reshuffling of the deck at some point here because there's so many teams in on so many players. Tony, can you hear us? Okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Excellent. Great. Good job.
Let me ask him the question.
I didn't mean to sound demeaning when I said that. Way to go! You figured it out. Excellent.
Well, let me ask the question I was asking before, Ak. Tony,
I got something else. 1 second.
Okay,
sorry,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have rumors. That's what I have to do today. Yeah. So all right. So we got Hemsky and Phoenix. That's one to watch out for. And again, I have heard that the Flyers are heavy on Josh Georges as a possibility. Now the Flyers have about $5 million in cap space because they put with the annual putting Chris Pronger on long-term injury reserve, which is a returning of the Swallows. So they've done that this morning, and now they have the ability to actually go out, and they have about $5 million. George's, it's not, his salary is not that high, right? So I didn't check out George's.
3.9. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but Josh Georges is a hell of a player. That's one thing I'll say. I want to talk to you about that real quick, Ty, because I think we talked about this before. I mean, I'm a Danny Briere fan, as you know, as well, and I'm also a Josh Georges fan. And like I say, the reason I say this Canadiens group is not my favorite group is because, the players that they have that are really quality people that can still play. I mean, Josh Georges was second in the NHL last year in block shots per game. I mean, with over 60 games, he can still play. I mean, in one day, the Canadiens got rid of Josh Georges and Danny Briere, Ty. I mean, that's a big shift.
It is. I mean, especially you're talking about on-ice stuff, but off-ice, too. I mean, these are guys that have been through everything. I think Danny Briere is a player that any locker room in the NHL would be good to have. I think that he has that sort of ability. He can be a mentor. You look at what he did with Claude Giroux. When he broke in the NHL, he was obviously a huge presence for him. I think with Georges, it's a similar sort of thing, too. I think that he's been a Canadian for so long that he comes with a lot of character. I mean, this is a guy that we were talking at one point of maybe being the next Montreal captain, and now he's going to be moved out. It seems interesting. Especially if they lose Mike Weaver, I mean, they're your shot blockers, and that's a team that relies heavily on blocking shots.
They're making no effort to get Mike Weaver back, and there's another player in my mind who played really well in the playoffs against you guys especially, and then was eliminated. Basically, didn't play against the Rangers. So yeah, I mean, and Mike Weaver, he's another guy who really is. He's going to go later in the day or later in the week, but somebody's getting a good pickup with him. I mean, someone's getting a really quality defenseman there. It's kind of like you don't get those guys. I've heard Mike Weaver tied to Pittsburgh, which makes some sense to me because the Penguins, they need to get those kind of players in there. And I mean, if I was the Penguins, Josh Georges would be on my speed dial right away. I mean, he's the guy I would be going after. I mean,
Weaver has some snarl to his game. He's not a big defender, but he was going right at Milan Lucic. He was going right at Jerome McGinley. He didn't care. I mean, he plays with that reckless abandon that I think as a coach you love, and
right.
You know that he's going to throw his face in front of a shot if he has to.
Right. I think you'd be a good fit with a lot of teams, and as Islanders need a solid defenseman, top 4 defenseman, I'd have no problem with Weaver being in my top 4.
Well, it's a question of what Toronto is going to – and apparently Brendan Shanahan is still trying to sway Josh Georges to waive the no trade to come to Toronto. So this may not be a fait accompli that he's not going to go to the Leafs. And the Leafs need a character guy like that. I know that there was some criticism in Toronto that of going for another ex-Canadiens defenseman who's not exactly fleet of foot. They see another Mike Komisarek scenario, but I think he's a better player than that. I think he would be a good add, and he would probably be a good fit on a top pairing with Dion Phaneuf because Georges is used to allowing, being the defensive rock, being the guy who stays back and letting the other defensemen go up and take offensive forays like PK Subban does. So if that deal happens, and we still don't know what Toronto would be giving up, I think it would be a dramatic improvement for the Leafs blue line.
Well, they're trying, as I was just told that, and that we're going to go to Tony too as well here. Tony's back. Tony's jumping in now. But we'll go back to Tony as soon as he jumps back in. Tony, every time he comes back with his smiling face there.
Nick Kyprios is reporting that the leading candidate for Mike Camilleri is the New Jersey Devils.
Yep, that's what I was saying for a while.
Yeah, you said that
about a month ago. Bitter or anything, but yeah, that was the guy. That was the team I had him going to all along because if not the Flames, and it looks like now he's definitely not going back to the Flames. Definitely, the Devils have been right on my rumor chart with him the whole time because he is the kind of guy that Lou Lamoriello likes to get. Lou actually, Dion Phaneuf's another guy that Lou Lamoriello I'm kind of surprised that hasn't happened, especially with the Volchenkov, releasing. But I still think that, and there's another guy that I would go after if I was the Penguins, Volchenkov. So yeah, I think there's something to be said there. Tony, you with us, or as soon as you get back in, Tony, we'll bring you on. Go ahead, Mike.
Here's something curious. One player who the Leafs really missed this year, and not to get too Leaf-centric here, and Ty can attest to this because he played pretty well against Boston in the playoffs last year, was Leo Komarov. He's just a very feisty, type of player, a professional shit disturber. And he, Dave Nonis, took a trip over to Finland to talk to Leo Komarov about coming back to the Leafs. He is an unrestricted free agent on July 1, and he's not exactly like a big-ticket guy like the Sedins or something like that, which Brian Burke went over to Sweden to try to get them to come and sign with the Leafs. But this is how much they want Leo Komarov back that he made a trip over to Europe and to try to get him to sign. So we'll see whether that works or whether he signs someplace else in the next couple hours.
Okay, let's go to Tony. Tony, you're back now. Sorry. Good job today. Again, with your persistence. So I've been talking to my Wild sources today, and basically what came down with the Wild from people I was talking to was they would be interested in anybody who can score. That's what I was told. Yeah, so what are your thoughts on today in the Wild?
Eck, a lot of what's going on with the Wild comes from having collected all of these young players. The group right now, Granlund, Coyle, Nino Niederreiter, Eric Haula, and then even on defense, Jared Spurgeon, Jonas Brodin, Matthew Dumba, Marco Scandella, who played really well. They signed Christian Folin. All of these guys are coming up on contracts in the next year or two. So this season you have RFAs of Nino Niederreiter, Next year it's Mikael Granlund and Charlie Coyle. So what's happened with that is they have $20 million to spend, but Chuck Fletcher's been very, very aware that he's going to have to spend money on these young players. The young players carried them into the second round this past playoffs, and they ended up taking Chicago to the wire in many games, and Chicago had a little bit more finish, and it could have been an LA Kings versus the Minnesota Wild Western Conference Final.
For sure, and they were impressive, and they did all that with Brizgalov in goal too. And the goalie situation for the last couple playoffs has been insane in Minnesota. Really, they haven't had any stability whatsoever. That's my big question today. Like, I mean, Josh Harding is obviously their guy if he's healthy, and there's no reason to think that his disease has anything to do with his injuries, because they're not necessarily connected. But I think they need to go out and they need to get a really good backup, and I kind of wonder if they were regretting not going after Marty Brodeur last year when they had that shot.
You know what's so interesting about that too? So at the trade deadline, I know we talked about it. I definitely didn't see a situation where Marty Brodeur would come here and be the number one guy, just because we have such a high opinion of Darcy Kemper. And then I think we exchanged texts, and you asked me to be mindful that Chuck Fletcher was in Anaheim, and all of a sudden Brizgalov gets the 4th round pick trade. So going forward, ultimately Josh Harding has earned his opportunity. So if he feels like he's healthy, it's tough to cancel out or snuff out a guy's dream at the NHL level. Nicholas Backstrom is on a contract that if he doesn't play here and he doesn't play in the NHL, they're still going to pay that because he's a veteran. He's over 35. You have Darcy Kemper. He's an RFA, and he's going to get a one-way contract. So you have 3 goalies under contract. I'm not sure if an outside of the organization goaltender is in the works. I think everything runs through Vanek. As soon as we understand if Thomas Vanek is coming to Minnesota, that'll kind of lay out what the rest of the plan is.
Yeah, I think Vanek is definitely in the part. Go ahead, Mike.
If we need any confirmation that Iginla is not going back to Boston, Kiprios and a couple other reporters are reporting that Iginla is looking for a 3-year contract, and Bruins GM Peter Chiarelli said that they're not interested in signing Iginla for as long a term as he's looking for.
Yeah, it's just no way. I mean, this is a player that, for all that he did this year, which is great, he's 37 years old today. They are not going to hold a spot for 3 years for this window, especially when that means moving younger players and more, maybe. You don't want to say more talented per se, but more dimensional sort of players, like a Brad Marchand or like a Louis Eriksson. These guys play penalty kill, they do power play, they're great at even strength. They will not bend for Jarome Iginla, and that's been the constant that I think we've all been told, is that if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. They're not going to retool their entire roster to accommodate a guy who's on the wrong end of 30 right now.
Yeah. I think a factor in free agents, or a factor on July 1st that we didn't see coming because I didn't think we would see these guys actually be on the market, are guys who are coming late, like Michael Del Zotto, who was not qualified by the Nashville Predators, or Christian Ehrhoff, who was bought out surprisingly by the Buffalo Sabres. I would be surprised if these guys signed today because they didn't have that 5-day window to be able to talk to other teams. I think
that matters, Mike. I really don't think it matters. I don't. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think that I think Ehrhoff just basically threw the Niskanen thing into a tizzy. Like that's the impression I got. The people that were interested in Niskanen suddenly thought, well, wait a second, Niskanen's got 15, 16, 17 teams interested in him, right? Suddenly, well, I don't know, maybe Niskanen's not, so great if Ehrhoff's out there and he only wants a 3-year deal and Niskanen wants a 5 to 7-year deal. I don't know. I think that if it might make this go a little bit longer, but not much. I think that. And also, you got to remember that it only takes like a couple hours to figure these things out with some of these teams if they know what they want. I mean, the Dino Chara incident was the perfect example of that. Like they show up at their doorstep, oh, we want to play here. This is where we're going to go. Da, 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 we're done in 20 minutes. So
the greatest
free agent signing of all time. What was that?
The greatest free agent signing of all time.
Yeah,
I agree.
It is hard to argue that. It is really hard to argue that. And what's funny is I saw Chara, Dan, when he was an Islander in his first preseason game, which was in Philadelphia in the Spectrum. Before the Spectrum was closed down. When he went out there, I usually sat in the top level when back then when I was going with my family, but because it was preseason, we'd moved down to the bottom. When he came out, I was just like, this is like an unborn giraffe, like a brand new giraffe. He knew he could not play hockey. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, what is it? It was a freak show. I was like, it was like the Manute Bowl of hockey. And I was sitting there watching this.
That's the name that just came to my head was Manute Bull, like a project, someone who just started playing a sport 2 or 3 years before he's, like you get some of these kids playing football not until they're high school, in high school or something like that. And
yeah,
it was definitely rough around the edges the first couple of years.
Yeah, for sure.
And imagine how history would have changed if Ottawa had decided to keep Chara and let Wade Redden go, because that was the option. It was either Redden or Chara.
Right.
Elliot Friedman from Sportsnet is reporting that Calgary, Colorado, Florida, and Washington are the leading contenders for Brooks Orpik. Any one of those teams get him, I think you're paying too much, and I think you're giving a lot for a guy who doesn't have much left.
I'll throw the team I would put at the top of that list, at least that I've heard, is Washington. And I wouldn't say Colorado. I mean, Colorado, who else?
Colorado, Calgary, and Florida.
Maybe Florida. Calgary, no.
You'd be nice in the Florida locker room with all those kids there. I don't think he has much left on the ice, but off the ice, he has some pretty good leadership skills, and I think you get him in that young locker room, he might be a good presence in there.
I think that could be a place for Willie Mitchell, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely.
A steady veteran who they could probably sign for a couple years, not pay a ton of money to. Somebody who can tutor Gabranson and Kulikov and. Ekblad's going to make the team this year as an 18-year-old. I'd be surprised if he didn't. So they need a steadying veteran influence there, because other than Brian Campbell, they really don't have that. Maybe Mike Weaver goes back to Florida. You never know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I would do that. I mean, I think that he would make some sense in Florida, but Florida's a little different than the Sabres in terms of I think that they're doing more of a try to win now type attitude.
Here you go, Ek. Agent Don Meehan of Newport Sports confirmed on Vancouver radio that the Canucks are pursuing Jerome Iginla. That would be Iginla with the Sedins. That would be an interesting combo.
It'd be a great line 5 years ago.
Exactly. In NHL 2009, we probably would put that line together in a heartbeat. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I obviously, he would be a good fit with those guys, and there is some. You do know that the Canucks in moving Kessler have to do something. They have to that is not an easy pill to swallow. That trade and for Canucks fans, so maybe this is. But I think Ryan Miller is a good enough pickup for them. I would say away from McGinley, and then letting Santorelli go. This is another man. This Canucks team is totally bipolar. They don't know which way they're. It's like there's all sorts. I mean, are they young? Are they old? What are they doing? This is the thing about them right now.
Okay, I got the joke of the day. Chuck Gormley from Comcast reports Mikhail Grabovski asked for a prohibitive $5 million request for salary in free agency this year. Wow.
Good old Mikhail. He's always good for a couple of months on Hockey Buzz of talk. I don't want to talk about Grabowski again this year. Please, someone sign him. Last year we talked about him forever.
All right, it's noon.
It is noon.
Ring the bell.
And I would like to announce that I've been signed to the...
Ek,
yes, here we are.
Got a question for you, Ek.
You go ahead.
one of my Twitter followers wanted me to ask you, with the Senators, trading Spezza, would it be possible, if they're really going all in for McDavid, would they move Bobby Ryan as well?
Yeah, they would. I think their plan with Bobby Ryan is trade deadline.
Right.
And I think that's but I don't think Bobby Ryan's going to end the year in Ottawa. But if someone made the right offer right now, and especially because he's a winger, of course, so right now there's a run on centers. But still, Bobby Ryan is very very possible. Bill Meltzer has joined us.
And X, so with Bobby Ryan, I've always been very aware of Chuck Fletcher's tie to him. What we learned out of the Team USA, media kerfuffle with Brian Burke being very honest about what was said in the room, is that Chuck Fletcher was the driving force behind Bobby Ryan being selected in Anaheim when he was a part of that scouting department.
For sure.
A lot of the buzzwords from Chuck Fletcher, and kind of when he's asked to identify what's missing from his roster, he's talked about a 25 to 29-year-old segment of that roster that is just unaddressed in Minnesota. They have a lot of 23 and younger, and then 30 and older. And I could definitely see Bobby Ryan being added as a primary scorer type, having to give up young kids. So if Vanek is not going to be a member of the Minnesota Wild and he gets more money, more term elsewhere, that could be an avenue of approach for Chuck Fletcher with the Wild.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that Vanek. Actually, it's funny. I was talking to Danny Briere about Vanek, and and basically, he said, he might go to Minnesota, but Vanek kind of thought it was hilarious. So everybody just assuming that he was going to go to Minnesota because it wasn't necessarily. That's usually the case with these things. I've seen this before. You've seen this where these guys get like someone's, his wife's from Minnesota, his family's from Minnesota, he's going to go to Minnesota. But these guys are not sure. Maybe not. It's not definitive that he's going to go to Minnesota. And the way he played down the stretch it didn't help him. And now I've talked to people about Iginla versus Vanek. You hear that argument now a lot. So it's all kind of up in the air what they do. Bill, I want to talk to you. Bill, welcome.
Hey everybody. Figures that just as I am jumping in the car, the Dallas Stars make a major trade, but it's
a major trade indeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed. So you're doing some gardening today, Bill?
I am actually sitting outside enjoying the nice weather as the news comes in. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. So this trade, this is it wasn't totally out of left field. We knew Spezza was on the radar, but Jim Nill. That's all I can say. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, Jim Nill in the last years has come in and added some really major pieces to that puzzle in Dallas. I mean, you have to admire what he's done over the last year especially between the acquisition of Seguin and this trade. If you look at the Stars, how strong they are down the middle now between Seguin and Spezza, and don't forget Cody Eakin is a pretty darn good young player as well. I mean, he was kind of cast a little bit in the second line role this year. I think third line is more ideal for him. But if you look at that 1, 2, 3 down the middle, you still have a lot of youth between Seguin and Eakin, and Spezza's still in the prime of his career right now. That's that's a pretty formidable lineup for a team that just got in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
And if you look at what's going the other way too, in these kinds of trades, especially nowadays, you never get full value. When you're trading a star player the caliber of Spezza, you're never going to get that equivalent player in return. I think that Dallas gave up some value in return in terms of depth of players. Chazon is a nice player, nice complementary player. I think expectations were raised, maybe a little bit beyond what he's capable of doing just by virtue of the fact that he started out his career with 9 goals in 10 games. He's really, he's not that kind of a player, but nobody's that kind of player. But he's a nice complementary forward. if you put him with the right playmaker, he can score a few goals. He's strong along the walls. I mean, big guy, uses his body well to protect the puck. I mean, he's a guy who can step right into that Ottawa lineup. The other two guys as well. I mean, Guptill and
Sorry,
Nick
Bill,
Paul,
one second.
both guys.
Sure. For a second. Manny Malhotra signed in Montreal.
Yeah.
Just
1 year, $850,000 for Manny Malhotra.
That's not the first guy I thought who had Manny Malhotra in their poll. That's a good one. Sorry, I got another call coming in about this one involving Columbus and a possible trade. So I will let you go, Bill, and Mike's the quarterback for a second. I'll be on mute here. So.
Okay, Mike, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Dan.
I was just told that by one of my sources close to the island that they would absolutely be stunned if Griffin Reinhart was in a deal for Dion Phaneuf. I was told that, and this was widely reported and just confirmed, that Snow actually called Reinhart about a week or so ago saying, look, I'm not trading you. You're part of the
air off to Pittsburgh, guys. Air off to Pittsburgh.
Wow.
Done.
Yeah.
So I would be very surprised if Reinhart was actually in a deal for Phaneuf.
Okay. Well, I mean that was we were just speculating.
Totally. Yeah. He just wanted to. I just reached out to him and he just wanted to get back to me on that.
I just think that if we're talking a Phaneuf deal to the Islanders, that it's probably going to include some prospect along with a guy like Bailey, who's been reported to be possibly moved.
Absolutely.
Unless they move a veteran guy like Hamonic or somebody like that who's got a long-term deal. So, but yeah, okay. So now we've had two signings. Malhotra is a depth guy, probably fits in as a third or fourth liner for the Habs at a reasonable $850,000 salary. We're going to see a slew of those signings today. We don't have any idea of how much Ehrhoff is going to cost, but Ehrhoff
reporting it. 1 year deal, $4 million, Pittsburgh.
For Ehrhoff?
For Ehrhoff, that's not bad.
1 year, wow.
1 year.
That's very surprising. Ty, your thoughts? Christian Ehrhoff for 1 year. I thought he was going to go for a 4 or 5 year deal, but maybe he just wants a soft landing spot with a team where he can put up big numbers.
Yeah, I mean this is a great deal for the Penguins. I think. 1 year, $4 million for that guy. I mean, this was a guy that we thought for sure you'd have to spend a first-round pick and then some at the deadline just to get him. And that's when he had that awful contract that went on until the sun burns out. So I think this is a pretty good deal for them, obviously. And this, I think this definitely tells you that Niskanen is not an option for them anymore. Yeah. Basically the obvious as well.
Yeah, and you do have the Penguins have Paul Martin as a UFA at the end of this year at $5 million. So you're gonna, they're clearly. I mean, I think Jim Rutherford, and I think everything that they have done in the last couple weeks in terms of hiring Rutherford as a short-term GM, hiring Mike Johnston as a coach, is indicative of a team that's going for it now, and this just, I think, adds to it. Bill, what do you think of the addition of Ehrhoff on a 1 year deal?
Yeah, on a 1 year deal especially. I think that I agree totally with Ty that means that Niskanen is not coming back. I think that that helps him withstand his probable departure. Ehrhoff's a quality player. I mean, if his contract, as Ty said, wasn't until the sun burns out. I mean, he's the guy who would have been part of the rebuilding process in Buffalo while they're waiting on those young defensemen to develop. But that's a guy who's going to step right in the Pittsburgh lineup and give them a lot of quality minutes. And as you said, Martin goes unrestricted next year, so he's the guy I think they're not going to re-sign long term. So if things work out with Ehrhoff, they might extend him at some point. I think that's a nice move on both sides.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The other thing I wanted to mention too, with Niskanen, we've talked a lot about it here in Minnesota, and he seems to want a 7 year max deal sort of situation, and a lot of his production seemed to be a little bit inflated just because of how good that Pittsburgh offense is. So
right.
in a situation where Ehrhoff goes there, he gets a 1 year prove it deal with the benefit of the increased production there. So I would be mindful that Minnesota might also have interest in Paul Martin, Minnesota ties, and he could possibly be a pair with Suter as well.
And Chuck Fletcher has connections with the Penguins, although Rutherford's the GM there, so that's changed. But no, I mean one of the factors here, and we talked about this, and even though Ehrhoff was added to the to the pool, and so was Michael Del Zotto, this is not a deep pool when it comes to defensemen. Dan, I mean right now, I mean you've got Niskanen, you've got Anton Strawman. Dan Boyle's 37 years old. I mean, there's not a lot of defensemen out there who are going to really provide an upgrade for a lot of teams.
I mean, we've talked about with the Islanders.
First thing out there, real quick. Sorry, guys, to interrupt. You guys are doing a great job, by the way. This is perfect. Thanks very much. I'm just for the little bit here, I'll be on here, but you guys are doing a wonderful job. I'm hearing Niskanen and the Red Wings very close, that would make sense because I knew the Red Wings were also in on Ehrhoff. So I would suspect since Ehrhoff went so fast, Niskanen's going to go fast here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, when you're trading for the rights of Dan Boyle, it's a thing. There's not a lot of defensemen out there. I mean, it's that simple.
Right.
How many quality guys are out there really that could help a team right now? 4, 5, 6 maybe? I mean, like Mark Fane seems to be a guy who I think could help a team that's a little under the radar. But like you're looking at some reclamation projects like Volchenkov, who got and O'Brien, those guys who are getting bought out, Del Zotto. If Nashville doesn't want a 24-year-old defenseman, that should be a warning sign right there. There's just nothing out there for defensemen unless you're going to trade for one, and I think that's why Georges is going to get a lot of interest because there's just nothing out there.
Well,
it's like
Del Zotto's is a weird case because he did well. He did well with a guy who usually, with Tortorella, who was usually a guy who's tough on players. He goes, and then Tortorella gets fired. They bring in Vigneault, and him and Vigneault are like fire and gasoline. They don't work out. Then he gets traded to Nashville for Klein, and a place where defensemen usually flourish.
Right.
They don't match. They don't extend him a qualifying offer. I mean, what I've seen of Del Zotto, he's not a bad defenseman. He's 24 years old. I mean, yeah, things don't add up there.
No, it really doesn't.
Gentlemen, one of the very under the radar players that's going to be available is Tom Gilbert. He was bought out here in Minnesota after a rough year and a half or so after he came over in trade. But his possession stats and a lot of the advanced statistics on him, somebody could possibly make him into a very good bargain, and he's out there.
Okay, there's a report here, and it's not confirmed, but Eric Erlinson from Tampa is saying that Benoit Pouliot got a 5-year deal from Edmonton.
Sabres have gotten back Matt Molson, as I've been talking about all along.
There you go.
From way back, right? Matt Molson is a Sabre.
Hearing the Oilers signed a couple players too, Mark Fane and Benoit Pouliot.
Okay, Pouliot got a 5-year contract.
It's insane.
Worth $20 million.
Oh, Edmonton, what are you doing?
For how much? 20?
20 total, yeah.
Okay, Nikita Nikitin for 4.5 and Benoit Pouliot for 20.
I'm gonna say pending a couple things still. The Molson thing is still I'm not gonna say there's a couple of things still to be done there. So before we write it up completely.
Yeah, well let's just talk about
Actually, it might be. He might actually be on the Sabres. May have lost him. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Did you see No, never mind. Sorry, fake account. Damn it. Sorry.
While you're checking it out, let's talk about the Oilers signing. No, we don't have any numbers. At least I don't have any numbers on Mark Fane. But Mark Fane's a solid, I'd say 5'6" defenseman. Played with the Devils. I don't think he's anything more than that. Benoit Pouliot played pretty well during the playoffs for the Rangers. Took a lot of minor penalties. Former lottery pick, former top pick of the, I believe it was
Minnesota Wild, sir. Minnesota Wild.
Minnesota Wild. There you go, Tony. But has never really shown that kind of consistent talent. But played pretty well for the Rangers. But 5 years, $20 million. Are there any padded cells in Edmonton, Ty?
I mean, I can't believe this. I mean, as someone who, Pouliot was here for the 2011-2012 season. I thought he was a great contributor to the team, but this is not a player you give five years to, let alone $4 million for those 5 years. I think this is a very tough contract, and maybe this is the Oilers have an Oilers overpay because they are the Edmonton Oilers. But I mean, this is I can't imagine giving this guy 3 years, and you got a team giving him 5. I mean, when he's on his game, he's a very solid contributor on your second or third line, but he just takes way too many offensive zone penalties.
Yeah.
His game is very hot and cold, like I said, and I couldn't imagine a team doing this. But hey, Edmonton did, and here we are.
Well,
Benoit Pouliot.
Jesse Winchester signed in Colorado.
Say that again, Eck?
Jesse Winchester. Jesse Winchester signed in Colorado for I think 3 years, but I'm waiting to see if it's 2 or 3 years.
Okay. With Benoit Pouliot, he falls into one of the biggest draft bust categories for the Minnesota Wild. Yeah. And about the only thing he contributed to the Minnesota Wild during his time was he was traded for Guillaume Latendresse. And we got one 25-goal season out of Guillaume before he was gone.
Well, and this is an interesting thing here with Pouliot, because Pouliot, like I said, did play well for the Rangers going to the finals. I know Brian Boyle is a UFA. We know that Anton Strawman is a UFA from that team. How much that exposure and experience of them getting to the finals will boost the price of guys like Boyle and Strawman. I mean, Dan and Anton Strawman was in Toronto. When he was brought in, there was talk of him being like the next Nicholas Lidstrom, which if you look at back at that, it's laughable. Then he went to Calgary, he went to Columbus, found his home with the Rangers. Now he's poised to make big money. If I'm a team out there, I'm scared of paying Anton Strawman $4.5 million.
The Leafs have signed Dan Boyle.
I think that's a fake account.
Dan Boyle.
Yeah, I'm trying to check into it right now.
I think that's a fake account. If you look at the Bob McKenzie, there's a J in there instead of an I.
No, I don't mean that one. I know, I saw that, but I think there's something else with him.
Okay. But yeah, Strawman is. I think he's a very nice player.
We'll hold off on actually putting it up there. But let me see. I'll let you know.
Strawman's a sweetheart of the analytics community.
Which is a reason for me not to like him.
But I also think that's kind of driving the opinion on him with regard to what he's going to be worth this summer.
Although he did have a very good playoffs and proved that he could handle top 4 minutes in a real high pressure situation. If he goes to the right team, I think he'll be productive. But you are going to be paying a lot for him just because he picked a great season to be a free agent. And you look at these guys, they're like Niskanen's a nice player, Strawman's a nice player. They're the only ones there, so the market is going to completely overpay them. So they went from nice value players to still nice players who are making way too much money. That's going to be a trend, I think, today.
And Dan, that's what I looked at too with when we talk about Matt Niskanen. I think Matt Niskanen's a very, very good player, but I don't necessarily understand him to be a number 1D or
Can
even
I
a
jump in
number
for 1
2.
second, guys? Arthur Staple of Newsday is reporting Islanders signed backup goalie Chad Johnson.
There you go. There's your backup.
Good.
Yeah, great signing.
It's a good signing.
Wait for the money here too. Let's see. Got to see what that is for sure.
And we're still not. There's still no definitive confirmation that Boyle has signed with the Leafs. I mean, it's out there in terms of a non. According to this, it was a fake Bob McKenzie account, so this may be just a complete hoax.
Mike, it's this is one of those instances that we've seen before, where this is there is a fake Bob McKenzie thing. Obviously, I guess on Twitter people are saying,
Yes.
But at the same time, they are really close to signing Dan Boyle. So whether or not you can sit there and say it maybe is not done or it could be done.
Yeah.
There
Even
are
a
different.
broken clock is right twice a day, right?
Yeah. This is one of those instances that's really tricky because the fake account might actually have been right, which has happened before. So we'll see. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Dan, what I've found to be so interesting is the swing for Garth Snow. Not getting possibly what people believed was value for Vanek, but he has since been very, very active, and I think
Yes.
he's gotten very, very good value.
Yeah, his job's on the line. I think he knows that, especially if Garth Snow sells the team. If he decides to sell the team, I can't see any new owner not wanting to completely clean house. So I think Snow is trying to prove himself. And also, this is the last year in Long Island, so maybe they're going to open the purse strings a little bit when they know they're going to have some revenue coming into Brooklyn. The luxury boxes are already all sold out in Brooklyn for the first season. So I definitely think that this, I want to believe them when they tell us that they're going to spend money, but it's still like the show me. You got to show me. Yeah, it's like I wanted to believe the Sharks for years that they can win a Stanley Cup, but you got to show me. So when it comes to the Islanders management, please just show me that you guys are aggressive. But I think the biggest thing going for the Islander fans right now of why I think they're going to be aggressive this year is even Garth Snow realizes he cannot give Buffalo a top 5 pick next season. That draft is too good, and he will look like a complete, epic failure if for some reason the Buffalo gets McDavid or Eichel with the Islanders draft pick.
All things being equal, Dan, if the Islanders could move to the Barclays Center this year, would they want to?
I don't know. That's actually a really good question. I think they want to get there as soon as possible. I definitely think they need the guaranteed revenue that will be coming from the Barclays Center. The Barclay Group had mentioned, and Chris Botta had it, that they're guaranteed. The Islanders will be guaranteed $40 million a year. So obviously, I think they can't wait to get to Brooklyn. And I think when you're selling a free agent as well, look, you can live in Manhattan, you can live wherever you want around here, and just take the train to Brooklyn. I think it's an easier sell than, hey, look, we got one more year in Long Island. If you stay here with us, and then a year from now, free agents don't want to hear that. They're ready to move their families. They're ready to start playing right now. They're not going to want to wait for a year. So I think if they could get to Brooklyn this year, they would want to. But that's definitely I guess the silver lining or the yellow brick road, is the end of Brooklyn, because I think once they get there, they're going to be fine.
Ty, the one concern I would have with the Islanders signing Johnson is Johnson may have been very comfortable playing behind the Bruins, who are one of the best defensive clubs in the league, and now you go from that, and sorry Dan, you go from that to a team that has no concept of defense whatsoever. Now we know that Khudobin played very well in Carolina, and they've had similar defensive problems. But do you foresee a problem with Johnson with the Islanders?
No, because I think if he's used in the right way, where you give him 20 to 30 starts, 30 might be on the higher end of it, but you give him the starts there where he gets comfortable and he can get into grooves where he is a very good goaltender, and it's not just a defensive system around him; it can be a little bit more. There were times in January where he was coming in and he was actually playing better than Rask. Rask was going through a little bit of a slump. They thought he hit a bit of a wall there in his first full season as number one. Mm-hmm. And Johnson came in and he stole the show for about a month there. I mean, his January to the end of the year numbers were out of this world. He was almost tending the net at a 940, which you'll say it's not sustainable, things like that. But I think for what the Islanders are right now, he's a solid option. I'm curious what it means for guys like Poulin. Like, what is he? What is the value there? What happens now?
I can talk about Poulin.
A couple details here. Let me just interrupt. According to a couple reports here, Chad Johnson, the two-year contract, $2.6 million, so 1.3 AAV. Also, the Ottawa Senators, Twitter feed is reporting they have re-signed Milan Michalek for 3 years. Wow. I think that for Leafs Nation, the talk that the Leafs were talking to Milan Michalek was scarier than the prospect of signing Dave Bolland for 7 years, because Milan Michalek has had a chronically injured knee. I think he tore both ACLs throughout in his career, and the prospect of anybody signing Milan Michalek was, I think, a scary proposition.
One more thing, Mike. Vanek is looking for like a 5-year deal, which is really the holdup apparently on certain situations, from what I've told.
Who was that, Eck? I'm sorry.
Vanek.
With Minnesota.
With anyone, he's looking for a 5-year deal.
Yep.
And people are willing to go 3, but not 5, and for good reason. It makes sense to me. I mean, I wouldn't go 5 for Vanek.
Obviously the compromise will probably be 4.
And the Niskanen crowd is not happy about the 1-year deal signed by Ehrhoff as well.
I'm sure. I mean,
there you go.
And the funny thing is, and again, we don't know this. It's probably not true because it was a fake account. But Dan Boyle, the talk has been Dan Boyle is a 2-year deal. He's 37 years old. He still can play, but he at most wants a 2-year deal. If he signs for less than $5 million, I think it's a pretty good bargain for the team that signs him. If it's 5.5, Ty, I think whoever signs him is making a big mistake.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor here. I think that with a lot of these guys, length is going to be the biggest issue, and there are teams that will give that extra year. But I mean, he's a player that I honestly would not be giving a 3-year deal to. Even 2 years is a bit rough for me, just based on what we've seen with the San Jose Sharks in recent years. I think he's still a fine talent, but I really don't know if he's a guy that I would commit to for multiple years at this point.
Milan Mahalik, 3 years,
the
$12
Predators
million.
I'm sorry to interrupt. The Predators are one of the teams in on Vanek right now.
Wow. They are really being aggressive to try and get some goal scoring on that team.
Well, they need a center act. If they're if they're not in on Paul Stastny, they got to be trying to get some sort of I don't know if they're going to re-sign David Legwand, but they need to get a center back, an offensive center. So.
Yeah, they won't be re-signing David Legwand, but they definitely Vanek and Stastny is also apparently on what I was told was that Stastny had his original list and it didn't have Nashville in it, but now it does. So. For what that's worth. I'll be back.
So what we've seen here in Minnesota with Vanek, specifically, the fan base has been very negative on Vanek because of the concerns over a long-term contract. We're coming off of not being able to amnesty Danny Heatley, seeing him make $7.5 million to basically play fourth-line minutes. So when we've talked about
Vanek, the Capitals now are looking like the favorite to sign Niskanen. I was just told.
When we've talked about Vanek here in Minnesota, we've wanted 3 years, not 5 years, just to protect against a decline in production and being stuck with that contract.
Right.
That type of player.
Well, okay, and one of the things that will be a factor possibly with as much as the Ehrhoff signing may have been bad news for Niskanen, the contract information on Mark Fane, 4 years, $14 million, $3.5 million cap hit for here's the Oilers again. They have to overpay to get people to come to Edmonton. Dan. Scary proposition for the Oilers. I'm nothing against Mark Fane. I think Mark Fane's a decent pro. I just don't think he is not a $3.5 million defenseman, just like Nikita Nikitin's not a $4.5 million defenseman.
Well, Barry Melrose once told me, this is actually an actual quote, that Edmonton is not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. That's how he said how cold it was during the winter and how dreadful it could be at times. So Edmonton is a tough sell. Just geographically, if you look at some of these players, if you almost think about it to the NBA, would you rather play in Cleveland or Miami? It's like, would you rather play in Edmonton or Toronto or Chicago or Detroit? It's definitely a tough sell in the Edmonton. I always think Edmonton's very similar to Long Island. If you're going to get any big-time free agents in Long Island, they're going to have to grossly overpay as well too. But the only thing is with Edmonton is they are going to have some guys that they are going to have to significantly pay at some point. What is Taylor Hall's contract situation?
They've got Hall locked up
in Everly too.
Yeah, they have most of the core guys except for Yakupov, who's still on his entry-level deal. Hall's locked up till 2019-20. Eberle's locked up till 18-19. Nugent Hopkins is locked up till 2021. So they have their core guys locked up long-term at $6 million per. So maybe they can afford to overpay some other players to bring them in. But I still think, in terms of cap management, you have to
Right.
sign these guys for what they're actually worth. Otherwise, I think you're putting yourself in a situation where you don't have a lot of flexibility. Now, where was that? There was an interesting little thing. Oh, yes. Talk about, you can officially call July 1st the silly season, if there's any truth to this. Reportedly, the Tampa Bay Lightning have offered a 7-year deal to Niskanen at $7 million per.
Oh.
Dion Phaneuf is on the block. I'm telling you right now, if Matt Niskanen gets $7 million per, Dion Phaneuf is on the block because he's twice the defenseman Matt Niskanen is, and I'm sorry, I know that I can be perceived as being a homer here because I cover the Leafs, but Dion Phaneuf is an all-star, and Matt Niskanen's had one really good year, so I don't. If that's how much Niskanen gets in free agency, then you need numerous padded cells in this league.
The news is that Josh Georges has been traded to the Buffalo Sabres for a second-round pick.
For what?
Okay. He wanted to go to a successful team. Okay.
For a second-round pick, that's it?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
So then I think you keep an eye on Tyler Myers now. If Josh Georges is going to Buffalo, you keep an eye on Tyler Myers.
Can I just say that if the Sabres trade Tyler Myers, they're absolutely insane. I mean, this rumor's out there so often, but this is absolute. I mean, that you cannot not trade Tyler Myers.
Yeah. Yes.
I got a phone call coming to you guys, but it's what I'm hearing is Cam Ward and Patrick Marleau talks are back on. Cam Ward for Patrick Marleau. Trade reported a long time ago.
You can trade Tyler Myers, Zach, because Tyler Myers has not had a complete season since he won the Calder, and that has been the problem. He had the great first year, he had an okay second year, he signed the long-term contract, and he has never been a consistent player since then. And they see $5 million plus for a guy who's had one and a half good years, and they're saying. And remember, it was Darcy Regier who drafted him. This is Tim Murray. He can wipe the slate clean. He can do whatever he wants. So he has carte blanche to go in and trade Tyler Myers if he gets a good return. David Pagnotta is reporting that the Capitals have signed Justin Peters from the Carolina Hurricanes.
Your deal for Peters.
The pick is 2016 second-round pick for Josh Georges. And all I can say is, Josh Georges, if you decide to choose the Buffalo Sabres, who will tank this year and probably be bad for a couple years, over Toronto, then you didn't belong in Toronto. I find that pretty interesting. But hey, I guess. Yeah, anyway, I'll get in trouble here if I continue.
Michael, too, though, Tyler Myers can be available because the Buffalo Sabres arguably have the best defensive prospects in hockey.
St. Louis has signed Paul Stastny.
Yeah. 4-year deal.
Yep, Paul Stastny. Also, the Ducks are also in on Vanek, but yeah, Paul Stastny is
Paul Stastny. So you have Stastny. Okay, so now you have Dallas with a 1-2 punch of Sagan and Spezza. And now St. Louis has Backus and Stastny as a 1-2 punch. Me thinks that the Chicago Blackhawks are going to step up their efforts to get a number 2 center because, and with Anaheim has Getzlaf and Kessler. In the Western Conference, you're going to need 2 quality centers to really go anywhere. And
okay, so along with this comes the rumor that Iginla might be close to signing in Colorado. So just going to keep on that one.
Called this one. Islanders signed defenseman T.J. Brennan to a 1-year deal.
Oh, boy.
One way, Mike.
Yeah, well, you know what?
TJ, I love TJ. Okay.
I do too, actually. I thought he was worth the risk.
TJ's a New Jersey kid. I met him at the draft. I flew next to him on the airplane back from the draft. I sat and talked to him for an entire time.
I'm very happy for TJ Brennan.
He's gotten screwed so far in his NHL career.
He didn't get screwed by the Leafs because the Leafs gave him an opportunity, and he played very well for the Marlies this year. The Leafs gave him a one-way contract coming out of Florida, and he earned the Eddie Shore trophy for the best defenseman in the American Hockey League. And if it wasn't for the fact that the Leafs have too many offense-first defensemen right now, I think they would have signed him, and I think they were interested in signing him. But I'm glad for him, and he's going to get a good chance on the island. That's a really good signing for Garth Snow.
Gentlemen, Devils get Camilleri 5 years, $25 million.
There you go.
Stastny gets 4 years, $28 million.
Wow, $7 million per.
St. Louis got very, very good
in the Western Conference now. Now you have Dallas that has Sagan and Spezza, Anaheim, Getzlaf, and Kessler. St. Louis, Backus, and Stastny. What does Chicago have? Now it's just Taves. They need to do something.
They have to get a second-line center. That's why there was a lot of talk between the Islanders and Chicago during the draft day. There was a lot of talk about Chicago being interested in Franz Nielsen. So the Blackhawks have to get a second-line center. It's imperative.
Ty, no mention of Granlund and Koivu.
I'm like famous for my. I always undersell the Minnesota Wild, and they always show me up every time. So, let's just call this thing with the course here.
You know, honestly, I expected Stastny to go to St. Louis because that team is so talented on the wings. For them to add Stastny, that is scary. And then they just have to figure out the goaltending situation. You know, that Jake Allen is the heir apparent, and they're going to their guy, Brian Elliott.
So maybe this makes more sense. Elliot Friedman's reporting that Tom Gilbert has signed with the Montreal Canadiens. That's a solid replacement for Josh Georges right there. I think Gilbert was one of the better players on a pretty abysmal Florida team last year.
I agree with you 100%, and has been a good player for his whole career. I mean, he was a really good player in Edmonton.
And it was one of the best. It was one of the best, most economical free agent signings last year, signing Gilbert for $900,000. And I'm actually surprised that Dale Talon at the deadline didn't shop him because he could have gotten a fortune for him. But he didn't, and now he signs with Montreal. Good ad by Montreal. And we'll have to wait to see how much he's being paid. But Georges was making $3.9 million, and that's another thing here that helps the Sabres out. They gave up a second-round pick, which they had 3 second-round picks in this draft. They gave up a second-round pick for Georges. Georges' cap hit is almost $4 million per, and with them having so much room under the cap, they needed to add some salaried players, and he is a good leader. So that does add up, does make a lot of sense. Now, I don't know if somebody said Camilleri got 5x5 from New Jersey.
Per Cherry.
What's that?
That was per Richard Cherry, I believe.
Yeah,
Cherry?
the Devils are reporting it too now. It's coming up from a number of places. Kyprios is reporting it. Tom Giolitti from the Bergen Record is reporting it, so that I'd feel pretty comfortable saying that that's the case now.
Clayton Stoner gets a 4-year deal from the Anaheim Ducks, which
who is this?
Unbelievable. Clayton Stoner gets a 4-year deal from the Anaheim Ducks, which is unbelievable.
Wow.
Tony, that shows you if you get a guy as big as Clayton Stoner that you can match up with your more skilled possession-driving defenseman. That's the value. I think that's what Edmonton did with their signings as well. They have Clef Bloom, they have Nurse on the way up, and they signed Nikitin and Fane to be the pairs for them, to be the stay-at-homes, to be the guys to move guys away from the front of the net.
Hearing a little bit more about Cam Ward and the San Jose Sharks. Something I've been chasing a little bit, the Cam Ward was offered to the Calgary Flames tried to get Cam Ward a little bit ago, and basically Cam wouldn't go to Calgary, but they tried to make one of those deals like we were going to talk about before, where you get a big contract, but you also get a good draft pick. So right now though, the Sharks are looking. We're talking about Patrick Marleau, so this is a possible hockey trade. So.
According to James Myrtle, the T.J. Brennan contract was 1 year, $800,000.
Nice value.
That's very good value for a very good player. Who's the thing is, it's not like you're signing a 22-year-old or a 32-year-old. He's in his mid-20s, coming off his best professional year. I think it's a good signing.
I agree.
Michael, I see John Vogel here of Buffalo News mentions that Josh George's to Buffalo happened because Brian Giunta could have interest in joining there as well.
Right. Yeah, and Giunta, I mean...
Yeah, Giunta's time is done in Montreal. Officially, I was told that too, which is kind of, I guess, basically when they signed Manny Malhotra, that Giunta's time was done, right? So, you got your other 2A face-off defenseman. Yeah, his time's definitely done there. And I've heard Buffalo and I've heard the Islanders, so I wouldn't be surprised at all. But Buffalo makes sense to go get Giunta.
Steve Zappe is reporting that the Rangers have reportedly signed Dan Boyle.
Yep.
That's from Newsday.
Yep. Need to check.
Chip Alexander, UC Jokinen going to Florida Panthers, 4 years, $4 million a year.
Jokinen.
Yep. Larry Brooks is reporting the exact amount that we said. Boyle, 2 years, $9 million, 4.5. Mason Raymond, according to Darren Drager, going to Calgary, 3 years, $9.5 million.
Good for Mason. I'm happy for him.
He tripled his money.
That's an agent doing it the right way, like we talked about before. He didn't have much going on last year. He took a 1-year deal in a city that made sense, where he could play, where he got a lot of time playing, and then bam, suddenly now he gets a big deal, which is, I've always been a Mason fan ever since the injury back in the Stanley Cup run. He's just a good guy.
Well, so far, everybody who's been a UFA on the Leafs has left. Brennan is gone. Boland is probably gone. Dan Boyle, who they were supposedly interested in, did not sign with them. The question is, who is going to sign with them?
Yeah, I don't know.
Wow. Gentlemen, I got Tom Gilbert at making $2.8 million a year.
Right. I saw that too.
I can confirm that the Bruins front office is, I think, awake. I think they're awake.
Brad Malone signs with Carolina, 2 years, $650K per.
This is exactly what we talked about, guys. It's like before the 1 o'clock, and I think we're going to see the reshuffle soon. Like, there's still a lot of players out there, but how this deck's going to get shuffled is interesting. Stoner is like $3.5 million a year, I heard.
Yeah, that's once. Hey, this is the defensive market here. This is the defense. The price for defensemen is escalating because there are not that many. George Richards out of Miami is reporting that the Panthers are closing in on Dave Boland. So that confirms.
Man, the Panthers get Jokinen and Boland. That's some serious power up front.
Gentlemen, just to talk about Clayton Stoner. Clayton Stoner was a third-round pick. He's a guy. He's 6'4", 6'5". He's a strong guy. He does very little with the puck as far as puck skills, but just showing that you can get $3.5 million, be a third pairing defenseman that will also fight and defend other players. And he played in Minnesota, which is notorious for boosting people's defensive zone stats a little bit, for being responsible. $3.5 million, unbelievable to me.
Brad Stewart has gone to the Colorado Avalanche per ESPN's Pierre LeBrun. Mike Zeisberger of the Toronto Sun is reporting UC Jokinen. The contract was 4 years, $16 million, so $4 million per for Jokinen, which
Mike,
about
I have
right.
to say that the Penguins should have done that. I mean, that's not a lot of money for UC Jokinen. The Penguins losing Jokinen for $4 million a year. He was too important a player to their team.
Don't be surprised. Nikolai Kulemin is signed probably in the next hour or two by the Penguins. I'm fully convinced that Kulemin and his buddy Evgeny Malkin will be reunited. It's been
talked
there
about for sure.
It's funny. It's funny, Mike. The concern in Toronto, it seems to be not who is leaving, but who they're going to sign. Because it just seems like that fan base, every move that is made, it just just seems to go against what they all want.
Well, there is a concerted effort here, and I give the organization credit. They have a pretty successful American Hockey League team with the Marlies. They have some young guys down there. Peter Holland, who they got from Anaheim in a deal for a second-round pick, played pretty decently for the Leafs, filling in, and he played really good in the AHL playoffs. Jerry D'Amigo, a former draft pick. Guys like Sam Carrick and draft pick Petter Granberg, who's a Swedish defenseman. I think that these guys are in the mix for the Leafs next season as part of in bottom six roles and bottom pairing defensemen. But the problem with the Leafs right now is they need a second line center because Nazem Kadri cannot play defensively at second line center. They need probably a second line winger because David Clarkson is a better fit on the third line than a second line, and he failed to play well with Lupul and Kadri. They need a top pairing defenseman to go along with Dion Phaneuf if they don't trade Dion Phaneuf because they just traded Carl Gunnarsson and Roman Polak isn't going to play on the top pairing, and Jake Gardner and Morgan Riley are not defensively adept enough at this point in their careers to play 25 minutes a game. So, and they need a backup goaltender because James Reimer is likely gone. So it's a question of what do they fill these holes with? Now I know that they meant and Ty, I'd like to get your opinion on this. The mention has been Sean Thornton as a fourth line guy. Now he's 36 years old. I think he'll be 37 before the season starts. The Bruins basically are making a move where it's like better to make it a year too soon than a year too late. But does he have enough to play? Does he have enough left to be effective for 1 or 2 years?
Physically, he's in great shape. His fight totals have gone down. He did have a concussion problem in 2 years ago with John Scott. He leveled him, gave him a really bad concussion. He was out for quite a while. So the body is there. It's how much you can really get out of him at this point over the course of an 82-game season. I think that he will get a multi-year deal, which it becomes a tricky situation because he will be 37 later this month.
Right.
And then it becomes a bit messy. Sean Thornton, I think he's a great guy. He's a great ambassador for the city of Boston. This is his home now, he says. But it's tough to envision a scenario where he is a valuable contributor to your team at 6 minutes a night, at 4 minutes a night. This is a player. He played 3 minutes and 20 seconds basically in the Bruins Game 7 loss. So I don't think that he's a guy that you can rely on to be a solid change of pace kind of guy at this point.
George Richards Strawman is both the Blue Jackets and the Leafs are in on Strawman right now. Is what I was told. So
George Richards is reporting that Boland has signed with Florida. Does not know the term yet.
Yeah. That's
Florida got very, very good down the middle with Bugstad and Barkov, and now Boland.
Yes,
and I would be very surprised. I would be very surprised if the Leafs are in on Anton Strawman. I just can't see it.
I mean, he's gonna get paid. That's the thing. It's how much, I guess, that it really comes back to, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, sometimes, with defensemen, I know people are just saying, okay, he had a great cup run and all that, but defensemen get better as some of the times as they get older. I mean, he could turn into the kind of defenseman that this is the beginning of something big with him. I wouldn't hesitate taking a chance. He's a smart guy. He's a smart player, so I wouldn't hesitate to take a chance.
Send an invite to Pete Tessier if you can.
Okay.
I mean, you think about the defensemen are slower in development. You're talking about Johnny Boychuk here. I mean, this is a player that he really got traded for nothing to Boston. He got traded for Matt Hendricks. He spent some time in Providence. He won the Eddie Shore Award, and he sort of slowly developed into this top 2 defenseman for the Boston Bruins. And you're talking about maybe, this is a guy that could be on the move if the Bruins do want to cut some salary here. I wouldn't move Johnny Boychuk, but this is the final year of a deal that only pays him $3.33 million a season. So he does have some value here when we're talking about defensemen. And I think maybe you could see the Bruins explore moving him based on the demand for defensemen in this market.
Okay, here you go, guys. This is an interesting little quote here. Josh George is on Sportsnet on rejecting Toronto. I've grown to hate this team, to play against them. How could I really go and put my heart and soul into playing for them?
Wow. Wow, that's a very honest response.
Needless to say, Josh Georges will not be getting any Christmas cards from the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Well, my timeline's not thrilled with Dan Boyle going to the Rangers, so that should be
Okay,
interesting.
before we know the details of how long the contract is, let's all take a quick guess here. How long of a contract does Dave Bolland get from Florida? Dan, what do you think?
3 years.
See, I'm looking at it, so I have to.
You saw it?
I would say 4.
I'm saying 6. Because if it was 4 or 5, he would have probably signed with Toronto.
Oh, I just saw it. Wow, wow.
What did he
5
get?
years. 5 years, $5.5 million.
Oh wow, that's surprising.
Who's that?
$5.5 million for Dave Bolland.
That was per Bob McKenzie.
Wow.
Wow, jeez, that's a lot.
The Leafs.
The real Bob McKenzie.
The real Bob McKenzie. The Leafs did not offer him any more than they offered. Their last offer to him was reportedly south of $5 million, and it was only for 4 or 5 years. So he got an extra $600,000 to go to Florida, and that's without state taxes. So
I don't think it's official yet, but just keep an eye out for Gianta to Buffalo for 3 years.
yeah, that would make sense. So now Bolland, Raymond, Brennan, all UFAs from Toronto, all gone.
Jeez. Mike, have Pete send me something because I can't find him on Google Plus. Sorry, I'm trying to find him.
Okay.
Or just or just tell me his or I don't know. I'm looking, but I'm doing too many things at once. So I definitely want to get him on here, but I can't find him.
I know he added him. I know he added you to his circle. So let me.
Yeah, I was looking. I couldn't. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find that at the same time.
I'll try to find it.
Here's a great tweet. Dave Bolland is going to be paid the same amount of money as John Tavares. Let that sink in for a minute.
You know, the other one I saw, I think Gabrick's going to make
Yes, I saw that too.
$875,000 more than Pouliot.
I also saw a good one that says the way Craig McTavish is spending money today, he's going to tip the pizza guy $200.
Wow.
The way that Edmonton does their business, though, it'll be somebody's kid delivering the pizzas.
Oh, it's been a crazy hour, but I feel like we're hitting that lull that Eck was talking about right now.
Yeah. There's a lot of moves to be made here, but this initial rush is. Yeah, there you go. Bolland per Elliot Friedman, 5 years at $5.5 million. Wow. Honestly, I don't think for all the critics out there of the Maple Leafs, if they would what would the criticism be now if the Leafs had signed Bolland to that contract?
They would get destroyed. They would get absolutely universally destroyed for making that deal.
Okay, so do they get credit for not signing him, or do they get? This is the thing that I don't understand when it comes to the media and the Maple Leafs. And I understand that most of the Canadian and most of the hockey media are centered in Toronto. But okay, if they would have been excoriated for signing him to that 5-year deal for $5.5 million by letting him walk, they should get credit, wouldn't you think, for not succumbing to a ridiculous deal? And you watch, they will not get any credit for passing on that deal.
Yeah, I think you're right. It seems like a GM will never get praise for not making a deal or for not grossly, horrifically overpaying someone. I'm actually looking at my timeline right now. There's some cranky Islander fans about Garth not overpaying for said player, and it's like, look, I can just think of like when they let Andrew McDonald go. Andrew McDonald's a 4 or 5 defenseman who's now making $30 million a year. You just couldn't give him that deal. Sometimes you just have to walk away from some players, and I think what the Leafs did was a smart move. Now they have to use the money and bring in someone else, and I think that will take some of the sting off of that. But I think sometimes the best move is the one you don't make.
Yeah, Terry Koshan from the Toronto Sun confirms what I had mentioned. The Leafs final offer to Boland was 5 years at 4.9. I think that was too much, but I think they really wanted him back. Brendan Shanahan likes Boland as a player. I mean, I think Boland is a quality player, but he said he can't. It came down to Toronto and Florida, and the $600,000 difference plus the state tax situation in Florida. And honestly, with his career in potential jeopardy with the ankle problem that he had, I can't blame Dave Boland for taking the most money he could possibly get, because you never know if it's going to negatively affect him down the road. I mean, if it slows him down by a couple steps, he's not the biggest guy in the world, and it's probably going to affect him, adversely. So
I'm checking into something here, guys, but I'm also hearing the Predators talking to the Sharks about Joe Thornton. So the Preds are going to get their center one way or the other here. It looks like they are really they're dead set on it. And we've got Spezza, Vanek, LeCavier. The Flyers have had discussions with Florida about LeCavier too, but it looks like it's not going anywhere right now. So,
Michael, outside looking in at the Leafs, I think no contract is more questionable to me than the Clarkson contract. Being honest about it.
Well, yeah, then there's nothing. I mean, based on his production last year, which was, it was a nightmare season for David Clarkson. He gets into the bench clearing brawl situation in the preseason, misses the first 10 games. The Leafs do great at the beginning of the year without him. He comes back. Boland gets hurt. They start falling down. He has another injury. He never really got comfortable on one line. It was just a nightmare season for him, and he's under contract for another 6 years at $5.25 million. I think he's a lot better player than what he showed last year. So, I think that he's going to come in with a fresh approach this year, and I'm sure the Leafs, if they can get 15 to 20 goals out of David Clarkson, they'll be very happy. But yeah, they didn't get their money's worth. But now, with Boland leaving, right now their top three centers are probably Bozak, Kadri, and Peter Holland. That's pretty inexperienced and pretty small up the middle. Peter Holland is a 6'1" and a former first-round pick of the Anaheim Ducks, and they like him, but they're missing experience and they're missing firepower. I'm still not convinced that Nazem Kadri is anything more than a number 3 center in this league. And according to
interrupt you, but I was just told that the Flyers have had discussions with Buffalo about taking Vinny LeCavier. So
the Canadians have signed Mike Weaver to a 1-year contract. According to them.
They listen to Ty and I. We know what we're talking about.
True.
They should have signed him before, but yep, they still are listening. I think LeCavier and Buffalo makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Based on they have to get up to the floor. He's not going to make it a whole lot better. There's like a lot of, he's and he still is a name, and well, this is what always happened. What's happening now. They put Giannis on that team, right? You have Georges on that team. You're going to get Vinny LeCavier maybe on that team. So now what's going to happen is Buffalo is suddenly going to just get genie in a bottle here, magic in a bottle, because they're putting all there's character players together and they're going to win.
Dan, I like this comparison. Dave Boland has signed for $5.5 million. Currently, John Tavares is making $5.5 million.
It's crazy. That's great. If you have kids, teach them to be a defenseman or a center.
All right, this just in too. Detroit and Tampa are apparently, the last two standing right now for Niskanen.
Larry Brooks is reporting the Caps have signed Brooks Orpik.
Ugh.
I knew that. Didn't I just say that one in the beginning of the show? I didn't say it. I thought it. Because I talked about that one, yeah.
I'm not the
biggest. Like that. That's a great signing by Washington. And
depends
Brooks
on how much, Jack. Depends on how much.
No, but
and
Brooks
for how long?
Is exactly the. See, this is the thing you got to remember. Barry Trotz needs somebody to sell the system to that group, and there's nobody on. Look at that group and look who he's got to try to sell that system to him. So Brooks Orpik will do that.
I agree, but I'm just saying he's 33 or 34 years old. He's slowing down. He's had injury problems.
His foot speed really concerns me.
Yeah, if you sign him for 2 or 3 years, it's not bad. If you sign him for anything more than that, I think
It's not going to be that. It's not
well, and yeah, if it's a 2 or 3 year deal, that's a good deal.
Gentlemen, I'm hearing Hemsky to Dallas.
Yeah, we said that before, and that makes. Oh no, we said that to Arizona. Excuse me.
Arizona, right?
Arizona was where he was going. If they pick up Hemsky and Spezza, that's a weird combination.
Well, they did play together in Ottawa last year, late in the season, and I think
they looked good together at times. But I don't know if I would do that. That's Hemsky's one of those guys I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. But
Darren Drager reporting that the Weaver contract was 1 year, $1.75 million. Give me a defenseman who played like Weaver last year for that, I'll take him. That's a great signing. Very cost-effective signing there. So they had Manny Malhotra for $800,000 or $850,000, and Mike Weaver for $1.75. That's pretty good cap management, but they may have to do that because they're going to end up paying a PK Subban, $10 million.
Whatever he wants, they'll pay him.
Question to everybody out there: is there a player out there that some team is going to offer sheet? Like Subban, like Ryan O'Reilly. Are we going to see somebody get creative, or do you think that is...
I think Ryan O'Reilly's going to be offer sheeted. I'll just put it out there right now. I don't think Subban will be, because everyone knows that they'll match whatever it is.
I think Ryan Johansson should get an offer sheet. Ryan Johansson and what's going on in Columbus, I think that's a great situation to offer sheet.
I think O'Reilly is a good candidate, too, just because of, Colorado's payroll. You might be able to sneak in there, and they might not be able to match it, or look to walk away from that deal because they have so many other issues that are going to be coming up down the road. But yeah, I think Columbus would match an offer sheet, but I think O'Reilly is someone you might be able to grab.
If you're a team and you really want to screw the Boston Bruins, one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, give an offer sheet to Torrey Krug.
Absolutely, that's a great
40-point defenseman. They would match it, you'd think, but you'd force them to move some pieces out. He's
you'd have to avoid him.
Unbelievable.
Well, what if Newport Sports searches out a team to sign PK Subban to a 7-year, $70 million contract, $10 million per? I know that the Habs would match any offer sheet that he signed to, but if Toronto did that, they could pay him. They have the cap room to do it. They have the 4 first-round picks to do it, or whatever how much the compensation is for a $10 million contract. But if the Habs match the offer sheet, it puts them in cap jail for the next 7 years. I mean, we've seen that happen before. I mean, back in the day, Sergei Fedorov with I think it was Carolina signed him to the offer sheet, and Detroit matched it, and we've seen it before. Calgary did it with Ryan O'Reilly, and that's the ramifications of that have come forth now with the club selected arbitration that the Avalanche went with for O'Reilly. So, all right. So
all right. This is something here. Again, I'm hearing that the Penguins are listening to offers on Marc-Andre Fleury. Now, there's something. It's very curious to me that I know they were talking to somebody last week about this time, and then it did fall apart. And then they were suddenly like, well, Marc-Andre Fleury is our guy for the future, right? And now, isn't it kind of fascinating that Ryan Miller hasn't yet signed? I mean, whenever we were talking about Ryan Miller, his name is still out there, right? I didn't miss if there wasn't an official.
Kiprios is reporting
now, right? There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Quick,
there
say
you go. So I just had to say something. Sorry, I just had to say it.
It looks like Miller to Vancouver.
Yeah, not shocked.
And Montoya to Florida.
Jim Benning is the new GM in Vancouver. He used to be in Buffalo. He was part of the regime that drafted Ryan Miller.
Right.
So that's really it's a great move, I think, for the Canucks. But now they're in this weird limbo. What are they? Are they rebuilding? Are they going to contend? What is this?
And it's a great point. They're not young. They're not old. They don't have a ton of prospects. They have a few prospects. They tried to trade away some of them to move up in the draft. What are the Canucks next year?
And more importantly, Vancouver is a 2-hour, 3-hour flight from Los Angeles, where Ryan Miller's wife is. So, that was the main consideration. Elliot Friedman is reporting that Dan Boyle got a no-move clause from
I
the
know. I
Rangers.
just started laughing at that. I just saw that.
And
Wow.
the thing is, we forget to factor in the fact that Boyle and San Luis played together in Tampa. So that probably was a factor in him signing
something
with the
might be up
Rangers.
with Phaneuf very soon, very very soon.
Hemsky to Dallas is official.
I'm seeing Miller 3 years, $5.5 million per.
Wow, that's more than I expected him to get. Ak, you said something on Phaneuf very soon.
Yeah, that's what I was told. I was told it might be a team that we weren't talking about too.
I know you can say what you want about the player. It wasn't his fault this year. But if I were the Penguins, I honestly would have considered using a compliance buyout on Fleury and signing
I'm
him.
with you. 100%.
Because it's just, if you can't find a trade partner, you are stuck. You are stuck with this guy, and it may not. Sure, it wasn't his fault this year, if you want to say that, but he just inspires no confidence at all when he takes
Here's the
that
thing,
back.
and you're dead on right, Ty, because this is the thing about this that people just don't seem to understand about this whole Marc-Andre Fleury situation, is that he's a good goalie, and he's a fine goalie, and he's playing in two things. First of all, he's playing in a system that I don't think suits the kind of goalie he is. He would be a really good goalie in a more defensive-minded system, but he's not going to be like your Grant Fuhr type goalie. He's just not. And the other thing is, though, because he is so shaky and emotional and up and down, that permeates through that room. And it's not just about him making saves or him not making mistakes. It's also about players just feeling bad for him and players wanting to help him and not focusing on their own things, and offense and defensemen thinking a little split second before they pinch. Can I pinch because I don't know if he's going to get out. All those things I think play into the problem with the Penguins and Fleury, and I know that they're trying to move him again. Obviously not for Ryan Miller, but I wonder if that's if I'm the Penguins, would you go after Marty Brodeur?
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I think I misspoke. I think it's 3 years, $18 million. That'll give $6 million a year for Ryan Miller.
Mike Heika is reporting the Stars have signed Anders Lindbach to a 1-year deal as the backup to Kari Lehtinen, which that makes sense.
Tallest goalie I've ever seen. Stood next to him in a locker room one time. That guy is, man, both of his goalie pads, like one of his goalie pads is wider than both of his legs put together. Like he's got these tiny little trees, limbs of legs.
Alesh Hemsky, 3 years, $4 million average.
Stars are loading up.
Yeah, they are.
They loaded up last summer. I mean, this team they've made 2 major changes. I mean, I hope the Dallas fans get on board with this because this is exciting stuff.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised that Neil didn't win GM of the Year at the NHL Awards. I thought that was his award.
Yeah, it should have been. I mean, and it just they obviously struggled. I think people were giving him a little, like me, were saying they were going to finish higher than they did. But at the end of the day, it's the Western Conference. Anything can happen, right? So I mean that he's a really good GM, and geez, he's showing it right now again.
Is it just me, or does Chicago really have to do something? It seems like the division's really catching up with them.
And Minnesota as well. You look at Stasny signed with St. Louis. Colorado's got to do something to respond. I mean, they added Briere, which I thought that was a great trade for them because, they knew Stasny was going to leave. And Dallas has as good a young players, if not maybe a little bit farther along, than I would say the Minnesota Wild does. And they've added Spezza, and they've added Hemsky, and they added a backup goalie today.
Yeah, nice support for the young players.
More talk that Reimer, I'm trying to get Peter Tessier on it, could be heading in a trade to Winnipeg. Yeah, I'm working on that one. Yeah,
I mean, Winnipeg makes the most sense. They're not exactly enthused about Pavlik. I mean, they didn't buy him out. They didn't move him. But they're not exactly confident in his ability to be the number 1 goaltender and being like the complete, dead set number 1 goaltender. If they bring in a guy like Reimer, he could be a 1A and has shown in the past that he can be a number 1. So I think it would be a good insurance policy for Winnipeg if they add Reimer. The question is whether what they would be giving back, would it just be a draft pick, or would it be, they have some salaries they want to, divest themselves of. They may, trade something in a deal for Reimer just to, and I'm not saying somebody like Bufflin or anybody like that, because those guys have a lot of value, but let's see.
Sabres are maybe involved in the FNUF thing.
Really?
If that happens, then it might be Tyler Myers.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, something to ponder. How high were the Ducks to give Stoner $4 years, $13 million?
High. Oh,
Ooh.
Blake Como to the Penguins and Thomas Greiss to the Penguins.
Bryce
So
is a good backup. That's a good pickup from them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Both 1 year's deals, $700,000 for Como and then $1 million for Greiss.
but Grace is a backup who you can never say we're going to go with as a number one. So
That's a
basically,
really
that's reinforcing Marc-Andre Fleury as the number one.
Right. He's a solid 25-game goalie, but he's not gonna push anybody.
So I mean, this is Marc-Andre Fleury singing for his supper this year. He's a UFA at the end of the year. If he plays great, if he does something in the playoffs, then they may re-sign him. If they don't, if he doesn't, then there's a new starting goaltender in Pittsburgh next year.
I'm with Ty, man. This is a bad idea. If you're going to change the culture of a team, you have to start with them. I mean, they've made the change with Shearer, they made the change with Bosma, but still at the end of the day, on the ice, those players have to believe in their goalie.
Sean Thornton has signed with the Florida Panthers.
Everybody's they're taking their talents to South Beach.
And Leafs Nation is breathing a sigh of relief.
Joe Thornton?
Sean Thornton.
Oh,
No
Sean.
relation.
I'm like, okay, good.
So are the Wild.
Wow, the Panthers are being really aggressive today.
They were 2
teams
years
would-
ago, right? They had their year off last year, but 2 years ago they were the talk of this day.
Oh,
Teams
God.
with no state tax doing very well with signings.
That's
And
true.
look-
That's a good point.
And
Dallas.
And exactly. Look at all the bad signings that they made. I mean, they just bought out Jovanovski, Fleischman, Scotty Upshaw. I mean, most of the signings that they made in free agency a couple years ago,
Bergenheim.
they regretted. Most of them.
I heard. I just was texted. Ginla's got a serious offer he's pondering right now.
You know what? There's been a lot of silence from the Detroit Red Wings there too.
Yeah,
They always are, and they always are until they make something happen. Like there's never anything that comes out of Detroit.
Guys, the two biggest silent. I mean, Toronto and Detroit.
Yeah.
In Chicago.
And Chicago. Chicago's just so stuck. I mean, unless they're going to move Patrick Sharp, they are.
Ty, here you go. Joe Haggerty just quotes George's on going to Toronto. It would have been like going to Boston.
Hey, come on, Boston's a fun town. Everything closes at 10 p.m. It's great. We're a major city, everybody.
Yeah. People give Connecticut a hard time. Bars close at the same time in Boston.
So obviously, Josh George's his goal today is to alienate every team in the Atlantic Division.
If only there were some bars in Boston.
Yeah, it's I don't know. We're trying to get the Olympics now, guys. In case you want to come here and
Oh, really?
have a terrible time. It takes me
I
2
love
minutes
Boston.
to get to the garden.
According to Nick Kiprios and I, yes, and I'll just pause on that one. And he's a former Leaf, and I did not like him as a former Leaf in his first go-around, but according to Kiprios, the Leafs are in on Dominic Moore.
Okay.
And Dominic Moore would be a nice add as a third or fourth line center.
I like Dominic Moore a lot.
I like that a lot. That would be a good signing.
I believe
There are a few teams out there that still need backup goaltending, and we're seeing it fly off the board here. Teams like Tampa Bay still need a goaltender.
Yep.
Reports are Orpik got a 5-year deal.
that is bad.
Insane in the membrane.
When's the next lockout?
I got a report here. Devin Dubnyk to the Arizona Coyotes for $800K to back up Mike Smith.
Let's see how much they paid for Orpik. If he got more than $4 million, and I'll bet you he did. Wow.
All right, I am going to pause you guys. I have to go make a very important call. This will be interesting, though. I'll be right back. Interesting, I said.
Dan, how much? Let's go around the table. How much do you think Orpik got?
Based on what we're seeing today, $4.5 million per.
Tony?
Too much. I'll just go too much.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt that, but
Glad it wasn't Minnesota, sir, is what I'll say.
Yeah. Ty, what do you think?
Probably 3.5.
I have a feeling it's north of 4.
You know what we're learning today? If you want to be, you have to develop your own defenseman. You just have to.
Mm-hmm.
You have to develop your own defensemen. You have to find the ones that fit you and you think are going to be really good, and you got to lock them up for their 20s.
Yeah, you got to start finding these free agent NCAA defensemen that have been spraying up everywhere. I mean,
see, I think the best bargains out there, I think the intriguing possibilities out there are guys, and I mentioned his name before, was a guy like Willie Mitchell.
Sure.
A guy like Willie Mitchell and a guy like Stefan Robida, who played so well for Dallas for a number of years, went to Anaheim. He broke his leg twice last year. He's 37 years old, but apparently the leg is fine, and he's, I think he might be a cost-effective 1 or 2 year contract at the end of his career. He probably can still play. That might be somebody that Toronto is interested in, and
I'd take him.
You take him, yeah.
I'd absolutely take him.
Gentlemen, the other thing I want to say about defensemen is I think it's very important to kind of understand the role that defensemen play and their skill set. So here in Minnesota, you have a guy like Jonas Brodin who can come across and he can use his skating and his passing and his puck skills to be a 19-year-old kid who's undersized, but he can serve a purpose and he can drive the possession. When you get defensemen that are going to play a more defensive role, they need time to grow into their body and into their strength. Otherwise, they're not effective. They're not able to move bodies.
Tony, one sec. Pierre LeBrun's reporting that Gianta has signed with the Sabres. Let me just ask you a question, because I'm a big Brodin fan. The perception out there is that this year was sort of a sophomore jinx, if you will. I mean, he played great in his rookie year. He was paired mostly with Suter, played 25 minutes a game, and I didn't watch a ton of Wild games, but it appeared that he was not playing as much with Suter and that he sort of dropped off a little bit. What was the perception there of Brodin?
With Brodin, in about the first 10 or 15 games of the season this year, he looked like a guy that was going to take the next step forward, and he looked dynamic. He was getting lower in the offensive zone. He was taking shots. He was confident. He took a dump in off of his face, and it blew up his cheekbone. And then from there, he was very hesitant to take physical contact. He had a lot of turnovers. He didn't carry the puck as much, and it carried throughout the season. In that Colorado series, Jonas Brodin specifically was targeted for forecheck and a little bit of the extra stuff, a little bit of the liberties, and it literally affected his play. It'll be interesting to see how he returns this year, if he's able to shake that off, and if he's able to play with more confidence. When they selected him and they brought him to the NHL that first year, Brett Flair, who is just the prospect Jedi mind in Minnesota, the assistant GM, he talked a lot about Brodin being able to slip checks and move very subtly and being smart and having vision. He struggled a lot with that this year, and it affected his play.
And we're joined by Peter Tessier. Good afternoon, Peter. Oh, I think we'll be joined with him in about a minute here. Let me just recap. Brian Gianta has signed with the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres have also added or re-added Cody McCormick, who they traded to Minnesota at the deadline last year. Good afternoon, Peter.
3-year deal.
Afternoon.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Talked a lot about.
Been some interesting signings out there. Paul Stastny goes to the St. Louis Blues, 4 years, $28 million. Couple other ones. Want to get your impression on the Winnipeg Jets have not done anything as of yet. Or what is your perception of what they're going to be doing in sometime today or tomorrow?
I hope they're looking for a bargain. I hope they're trying to find someone who can fill in a couple key holes, particularly third-line center. But who knows? I just had a discussion online with one of the local media people, and he's staunch in his belief that location, 7 seasons of losing, are a big determining factor for free agents. Maybe not lack of effort on the part of the GM, but public opinion here. When you re-sign a guy who had 26 points in 169 games to a $3.6 million deal, says there's not a lot of effort looking elsewhere.
According to a couple reports, Brian Giunta has signed a 3-year contract with the Buffalo Sabres. And one of the big factors was George is going to Buffalo. I guess that may have swayed him to sign with the Sabres. We'll see how much the money is, and I will bet that he got over $4 million per, which again, this is Buffalo paying him more because they have to make the cap floor.
Right.
Brian Giunta is not a $4 million player any longer, but you know what? He's probably going to end up being the Sabres team captain. If it's not him, it's George's. Interesting goings on in Buffalo. Interesting going on.
Michael, you want to know what too much for Orpik is? 5 years, $27.5 million.
5+. 5+ for Brooks Orpik. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, so far? Who's got? Who has
4.5.
I said over 4. Okay, at this point, we're an hour and 22 minutes into free agency. What is the worst deal that's been signed so far, Dan?
I think it's a tie between. I'm going to say Orpik. I think Bolin got too much, but I understand that I think Florida might have to overpay to get their players down there. So I kind of see that, even though I don't like the deal. I think long term, it's not a great deal. I think Orpik is for me the worst deal because I just see him deteriorating, and I think a year or two from now, his skating is just going down, down, down. And if you can't skate in this league, you're not going to be in it for that much longer.
Tony, what do you think is the worst one so far?
Benoit Pouliot, no question.
Oh, I forgot about that one. It was so bad I forgot about it.
Yeah. Ty?
The Orpik one. I can't. I'm looking at it. I'm just stunned. What?
Peter.
Like, how is this even a thing?
I'm telling you, it's okay. At this rate, Matt Niskanen is going to get 7. Eck is going to owe me cookies. He bet me 2 cookies.
And Subban is getting $1 billion.
Yeah, there you go. Peter, what do you think is the worst one signed so far?
Oh, Bolin. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that's just it's without a question. I actually don't have a problem with the Pouliot deal too much. I mean, it's you're Edmonton. You got to try something, right? You've got to make a shot, and you're going to have to overpay, just like Winnipeg is. But I mean, what I think is really curious about the whole situation is Florida's buying out players. They're spending like drunken seniors on shore leave in Miami, and and every team in Canada and most of the northern U.S. ones are paying for it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Peter, just to interrupt you for a second, Jets signed Matthew Perrault.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
First of all, I can't believe that Anaheim did not qualify him. I really can't. That was as puzzling as Nashville not qualifying Del Zotto. By the way, I think the worst one right now is Orpik. I think Bolin was bad. I think $5.5 million for Bolin was more than I thought he was going to get. 5 years was around what I thought he was going to get from anybody. If he signed for 6 or 7 years at 5.5, that would be possibly the worst. But Orpik, I think he's done. I think he's close to being done, and they paid him. They paid him 5.5. That's nuts.
He's a liability. He was a liability for the Penguins in the playoffs. He was not a shutdown defender that they needed. And to give him that money at his age and where he is physically, I would not do that. Players like that they don't age well into their late 30s. Like his style of play, he's not a Chris Chelios. He's not a freak. He's not going to wow you offensively and be like, all right, well, we'll deal with what he does in the defensive zone. This is going to be a problem for them.
I understand the want of the Capitals to want to add a veteran defenseman. I mean, you've got Alzner, you've got Carlson. Mike Green is a flawed player who you're paying a lot of big money to, and maybe what may be going on here is since Orpik has played a lot of his career with Chris Letang, who's a one-way defenseman, offense first, defense ha-ha, Mike Green is the same type of guy.
Sure.
So Orpik is a stay-at-home guy who's used to his defensive partner taking forays into the offensive zone. He might be a perfect fit for Mike Green, and that would be a good pairing. But 5.5 for Brooks Orpik is cuckoo land for Brian McClellan, the new Caps GM. Unless Ted Leonsis has just busted into the GM's office and has taken over making decisions. Just wow.
And here's the thing: is that you can find guys that can block shots and play physical for far cheaper than that. You can find a veteran defenseman who will be on your third pairing or your second pairing for $2 million. You don't need to spend $5.5 million. Brooks Orpik is a name and nothing more at this point.
Yep. Yeah. That's a puzzling signing, but. I don't know if Eck can hear us if he's still muted, but $5.5 million times 5 years for Brooks Orpik. I think I'm winning my cookie bet with with Niskanen.
Niskanen, yeah. Got a good shot there, Mike. I'll say that much. I was on the phone there, and I was told that unless of course something happened while I was away, that the Phaneuf deal might be tied to the Niskanen deal, which means that perhaps Tampa is one of the teams in on Phaneuf and waiting to see what happens there. So,
okay. Here's an awe-inspiring signing. Keith Aulie signs with the Edmonton Oilers. That makes a little bit of sense because Keith Aulie played for Dallas Aikens with the Toronto Marlies. Right. Very big defenseman, no speed.
Ollie, get your adverbs here.
Yeah, he's got a big wingspan, and if he can catch somebody, you're in trouble. Problem is, he can't catch anybody.
Right.
No, that's true. And by the way, Pete, how are you?
Good, Eck. How are you doing?
Good to see you, man.
Yeah. Excited about the Pro deal. That's good news for the Jets. It's been a bit of a unfortunate run for them trying to attract people. So I like this. It's a smart signing. It's a good one, and it plays into their wheelhouse of where they are as a team, I think.
That makes sense. I'm waiting for them to do something. I've been waiting for them. Of course, we're also hearing the James Reimer rumors now. So.
Yeah, it's funny. Reimer is a popular option only because the taste for Pavlik is so bitter here that no one wants to take that pill anymore. But an interesting point that was made on the radio here yesterday was if Reimer wasn't from Manitoba, would anyone really be that interested in him? I think that's a fair point. That hometown factor plays a lot of and a big role here for Winnipeggers because, frankly, location and 7 years of losing are a tough sell for people. So, you think, is there a hometown guy who would like to come here? Reimer fits that bill.
LeBrun is reporting that Perreault is 3 years, $3 million per.
Yes. That's what the Winnipeg media have it as well. I think Sarah Oleski put that out first, too. That's a great signing. It's a good thing for them to do. Reimer would be interesting, but Mike, the situation in Toronto best. Mm-hmm. Is he going to sit and be a 1A or a 1B with Pavlik?
Well, he believes in the whole motivation behind him wanting out of Toronto, besides the fact that him and Randy Carlyle don't get along, is he believes he's a number one goaltender. So he may go in there thinking he's got a better opportunity in Winnipeg to steal the job away from Pavelec, because I think he has no chance of stealing away the job from Jonathan Bernier, because the Leafs organization and Carlyle believe that Bernier is the number one and believe Reimer cannot be a number one. But Reimer thinks he is a number one and wants to get the chance. And I think he's a better option than Pavelec. I think he comes in there. He'll come in there on a 1-year tender offer. Probably sign for like $2 million. Start as the backup, and if Pavelec has one of his usual brain cramps 20 games into the season, Reimer could steal the job away.
Yeah.
You'll like this. Matt Fratton is back with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Nice. I'm very happy for that.
Vanek is down to 2 teams, according to several people out there. And down the stretch they come. It's amazing. I seriously question if Vanek was ever more than 3 teams, but he is down to 2 teams officially now.
Minnesota and
million.
The Islanders.
Interesting.
And so, from a Minnesota perspective,
no, I don't think it's the Islanders. I don't think it's the Islanders. I'm kidding. That was a joke. I'm not sure.
Oh wow! No, it was a trade.
What?
The Leafs acquired Matt Fratton from Columbus for Jerry D'Amigo and a draft pick. Wow. That's
You like
Jerry
D'Amigo, right?
Jerry D'Amigo was one of the guys who people thought was going to be the replacement for a guy like Nikolai Kulemin as a as a defensive forward. But the one concern that the Leafs and a lot of people have had about D'Amigo is that he might just be too small for the NHL.
Because I've seen him play in the A a little bit, and he looked like he had some pretty good skill, pretty good talent.
Yeah, he's a speed.
The Flyers might be one of the teams in on Vanek just now. I just got a text. It's surprising if it is the case, but we'll continue.
He's a speedy player, but in a game against Pittsburgh that was on the 24/7, he got laid out by Robert Bortuzzo and was lucky he kept his head on his shoulders. Well, I mean, Matt. The funny thing is, Matt Fratton could be a very good third line guy for the Leafs. They had him before. They liked him. He was a draft pick. He played for University of North Dakota, he's got the size and the speed to be an effective NHLer. But he did not factor in well with the Kings after the Leafs traded him for Bernier. Was moved as part of the Gaborik deal to Columbus, and now he ends up back in Toronto. So that's the first Leafs move.
I like that trade for both teams. I watched a little bit of D'Amigo. He seems to be a guy all over the ice, heart and soul guy. He just seemed to be caught in the logjam there.
Right.
Yeah, and Fratton is a hitter. He's a guy. I think he's 6 foot or 6'1", but he does like to throw his weight around. And they may have just made the determination that Jerry D'Amigo could not handle the day in, day out grind of the NHL, and that Matt Fratton can and will. Now, again, I mentioned his name before. It's going to be very intriguing to see whether the Leafs re-sign Leo Komarov. I mean, it's not going to be, unless this Phaneuf deal happens. Right now it appears that the Leafs are in more of a tinkering move type of situation. Komarov would be a bottom 6 guy, but would be a high energy guy. We'll see where this goes, but that's a little surprising.
The Leafs might be in on Vanek too, guys.
Well, the Leafs were in on Vanek at the deadline. Dan, okay, what I heard, and tell me if you can confirm this. The Leafs had made an offer that was an offer better than the offer that they eventually took from Montreal, but the problem was that Charles Wong and Garth Snow would not take any of the $5.25 million salary that they had for Vanek. They would not take a portion of that because the Leafs couldn't fit the $5.25 under their cap.
I heard that coming out of Ontario. I could not confirm that with anyone on Long Island.
Okay. Because I mean,
and I heard it too. And then when I reached out to anyone on Long Island, no one could confirm that.
because for all the criticism, and far be it for me to come to the defense of Thomas Vanek because he's a Sabre and I'm not the biggest fan of the Sabres, but I'm sorry, all the criticism that he got in Montreal, the guy scored key goals in the playoffs. He scored a couple goals against the Bruins. He did score down the stretch. He didn't play great against the Rangers. I mean, the criticism of him coming out of Montreal was, I think, completely ridiculous. And
he could float all he wants in Long Island and still put up 35 to 40 goals with Tavares
Right.
and Poso.
He was a great fit with the Islanders. He was.
He really was. That's why it's puzzling. Like, look, you played with Tavares, and no offense to the Minnesota. There's no center in Minnesota that's going to get you the puck like Tavares is. Now he's still talented enough to score 30 goals there. Don't get me wrong, but it's like they had something electric there. So it's just very interesting.
I think Granlund's a very good fit though. That kid is a puck wizard. He bounced back from a bad rookie year and
I like Granlund a ton, but he's not there yet.
No, and that's not even what I mean because I would never. John Tavares is a superstar. I would just say playing with Granlund and Pominville here in Minnesota, they're going to feed Thomas Vanek. They're going to put the puck on his stick, and I think he can score here like he did in his 3 stops last season as well.
It's just frustrating because at some point John Tavares is going to make someone really rich. Well, he actually already has. He made P.A. Parento rich. He made Matt Molson rich. He kept Brad Boyes in the league. But at some point, you think someone's going to say, hey, I want to play with that guy. He's going to give me an extra 30 points. Well, maybe that's going to be Brock Nelson. Maybe he makes Brock Nelson rich. But it's just interesting that if I was Mike Camilleri, and I like him going to the Devils, but it's like look who's going to be teeing up the puck for me. It's very, very interesting that some of these wingers might now want to play with someone who can get them an extra 10 to 20 points a season.
I'm not a big fan of Camilleri at that price on that team. I mean, I agree. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's one of the ones. I mean, you knew it was possible, but geez.
I'm seeing Jonas Hiller 2 years to the Flames, Calgary.
Yeah.
we mentioned it earlier.
Yep.
There's the Brian Burke-Hiller connection.
Yeah, there is.
I like that for Calgary.
It's a great thing.
Yeah.
It's a great move for Calgary.
Calgary's done well. I think Calgary, since the draft, has been making some shrewd moves. And, I think it's interesting also that, you've got Burke at top who's bringing in some interesting breadth of experience, and also with Trevelyan, who's got a different approach to things. Calgary's got a lot to be optimistic about.
$4.5 million 2-year deal for Hiller. So in the scheme of things where people thought that Ryan Miller was going to get less money than Jonas Hiller, Hiller got 4.5 and Miller got 6. Interesting.
Wow. It looks like Niskanen could delay some things for a while. Like apparently, just talking to somebody upstairs there, there's so many offers in for Niskanen that this is taking a while.
Well, as an extension to that act, I mean, honestly, with the price, and I mentioned this when we heard what Orpik got, with the prices out there now, and Niskanen probably getting north of $7 million, a Phaneuf deal is more likely because everybody sees what the market is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like, I mean, I couldn't imagine being a free agent on this day with the money that's tossed around right now. I mean, it seems every year it goes up a level here in terms of the insanity and the money that's thrown around. I thought the height of it would have been Leno with Buffalo, but every year there's something new. Every year. It
just seems to get more absurd. It's like the GMs can't help themselves, and there's not much available. That's the thing too, is there's not much available. So any above average player that you think can help you is going to get overpaid. It's almost like if you're a second line player, you're going to get paid as first line money. If you're a second pairing D-man, you're going to get top pairing money just because of the market and the lack of availability the players are. That's I get back to my own point with defensemen there. develop your own. If you can develop your own defensemen and lock them up for their 20s, you're in a lot better shape.
Yeah, that's the whole point. I mean, that's the key now. The draft is you have to have so many guys on entry-level contracts to make it work, to make your NHL team work. If you don't have if you don't have at least 2 forwards in your top 6 on your entry level and 1 defenseman in your top 4 on entry level,
look at the Kings. Look at the Kings in developing their own players and then locking them up at the right time.
Yeah, and speaking from a Boston point of view here, what we were told basically at the beginning of free agency is that they weren't going to be very active in terms of giving these long-term deals out because next year they do have to re-sign David Krejci. They do have to give Dougie Hamilton a non-entry-level deal. So they have money to spend next year. So this is a kind of
more and more like Maddox going to the Wild. I'm going to lose more cookies.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm taking a bow.
And honestly, gentlemen, the reason that Vanek makes so much sense to the Wild is beyond him playing for the Gophers, and it's beyond his wife being from Minnesota and him living in Stillwater, even though he's Austrian. I think the reason he makes sense to the Wild is the young core that we have, and in general, we have a very 200 feet team, complementary team, and they needed a number 1 guy to be the scorer.
And
I
think Tony, he's going to plant himself in front of the net on the power play with Suter. You're going to have Parise on the half boards. He's going to score. He'll score 40 goals and don't be surprised. Now you got he'll probably play with Jason Pominville, who he played a lot with in Buffalo. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Derek Roy coming to Minnesota because that was the entire line together with the Sabres. It'll be the Sabres' number 1 line from 3 years ago being the Wild's number 2 line. But I wouldn't be surprised if he took a lot less than he ended up getting or would have been offered from somebody else. So just buy me a gross of cookies.
Yeah.
Mike, honestly, Mike, 2 years ago at the trade deadline, I'm following in, and I see that return going to Buffalo. Johan Larsson, Matt Hackett, 2 picks. We're thinking, well, that's Thomas Vanek, and it ended up being Jason Pominville.
Right.
And Jason Pominville getting traded here, and then the contract extension, very, very tied to Vanek in a lot of people's minds, including my own, and I think it's paid off.
But this was the worst kept secret in the world.
Yes.
Here we go.
Yeah, no. Well, what was that? I mean, yes and no, because yes, we all knew that Vanek's wife's from there, right, and everything like that. But at the same time, his play really made this questionable, so we don't know. I mean, and at the end of the day, yeah, they got him, but I don't think he was necessarily their first choice either. I think that they were after other players as well. I mean, I think they made calls on Spezza. I think they made calls on Kessler, too. But Vanek, yeah, they probably got him to take a little bit less than.
I got 3 years. 3 years for Vanek.
Yep, he took the short-term deal. He wanted to go to Minnesota, and he was prepared to take less years or less money to do it. He wanted to go there.
Tony, if Molson fit in there and he didn't have such a bad playoffs and he really looked like he was going to be, someone that they could count on, would they have? Do you think they would have chosen Molson over Vanek?
No, I think Vanek was the plan all along.
Honestly, because they're similar players.
So, but what was so smart about Fletcher acquiring Molson is he didn't have to give up any of the young cores. So they traded Torrey Mitchell, 2 second-round picks. We had a very good opportunity to look at Molson. Molson is a guy, I think he should return to Long Island and play with Jonathan Tavares. He doesn't carry much. He doesn't generate his own shot, and his skating was not able to play a 200-foot game. But what I will give him credit for is he's a great guy. He did his very best to try to fit in here in Minnesota. He was never a fit because I didn't think that he could generate the opportunities, and we didn't have a carrier like Tavares to be able to get him the production that he saw there.
Nick Kyprios is reporting that the Leafs and Red Wings are in on Stefan Robida, who I mentioned earlier as a veteran defenseman. That makes sense for both teams. Right-hand shot defenseman.
Colorado too.
Colorado too. Also, Oh, where was that? There was another thing here, but it disappeared on me. Okay. Sorry about that. Let's see.
Drager's saying Robidoux to the Leafs.
Robidoux to the Leafs?
That's done.
Yeah.
It is done. Just got that too.
There you go.
Yep.
$6.5 million for Vanek. If you didn't see that,
Per?
Wow.
Oh man.
Per.
I think that's perfect, to be honest. The Wild have $20 million in cap room. They have to protect their ability to sign young players. I think that they could still add a defenseman, and they have some flexibility.
So you just replaced Danny Heatley's contract with Vanek and saved $1 million.
And Danny Heatley was getting $7.5 million.
Right.
And yes, and Danny Heatley was playing on the fourth line. Thomas Vanek's going to play top six. He's going to play power play.
That's what I'm saying. That's where the money's coming from. That's not horrible.
I would keep a really strong eye out on Joe Thornton and the Nashville Predators. I'll say that. They really look.
Mac, do you think he'd go there?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do.
Sean Avery wouldn't, but Joe Thornton might.
Avery's an idiot.
Well played, Mr.
I wouldn't go anywhere Sean Avery is. How about that?
I'm not going to say what I'm thinking right now. No, the one other thing that that the Leafs and Winnipeg Jets are apparently in on Leo Komarov. They're the top two right now, apparently.
Here in Minnesota, we love our Finns, and Leo Komarov jumped off the screen to me during Sochi. I believe he's extremely talented, even though he gets the gritty tag. I think he will come back to the NHL and be impactful.
If you put him in the right role, which is what he's designed for, an agitator, third-line player, whoever's going to be happy, who's going to sign him, they're not going to break the bank on him, and I think you're going to be very happy. This is the kind of guy you sign today that you love a couple months from now.
All right, here's one, guys. The Chicago Blackhawks. We were talking about them earlier today. Are apparently talking to Brad Richards.
I said that when he got bought out.
Yeah.
Said that when
Brad,
he got.
He's got a lot of money. He can go wherever he wants to just try to win, right? So that makes
the Western Conference.
Yeah.
According to a couple reports, Robidaux's contract with Toronto is 3 years. I have no idea on the money yet, but Richards to Chicago makes a lot of sense. I mean, as you said, Ak, he could probably take with their cap situation. He could take $3.5 million. Be very happy. He's got the big payoff from the Rangers, and he has a legitimate chance to win a Stanley Cup with them.
Let's keep this in mind too. Is that the Chicago Blackhawks could be in a situation here where they do move one of their defensemen. Now, Brad Richards can man the point on a second power play unit, and that'd be okay. Maybe a guy like Michael Roosevelt is on the move or something like that.
I think Oduya is on the move. Actually, I think he's the guy. But and I agree with you. That's a good point.
And that to feed into the possibility of Phaneuf being traded, James Myrtle reports, and he's accurate here, is that Robidoux is another right-handed, right defenseman. They have Pollock, they have Franzen, they have Phaneuf who plays the right side even though he's a left-hand shot, and now they have Robidoux. So they have 4 right-hand defensemen, which could mean they're going to trade Phaneuf.
The Capitals have signed Michael Latta.
Part of the Martin Erat trade from 2 years ago.
Right. Yeah. And Tanner Glass is a 3-year deal with the Rangers.
Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Sun in Winnipeg is reporting the Jets are talking to Leo Komarov, too. I wasn't aware of that. That was kind of new to me.
Yeah, that's what
The things I mentioned before, were they already out there, too? Because they could have been. I'm like, we're running around. So we'll just have like the disclaimer on top of everything, as if like they do on TSN, as long as this is not reported yet, but this is actually still happening.
Sounds like Dominic Moore back to the Rangers.
The Vanek deal includes a no-trade clause, according to Pierre LeBrun. There's not.
Of course it does. Everybody gets a no-trade clause. Like you're on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and you get a no-trade clause, and you get a no-trade clause.
Tanner Glass signs with the Rangers, 3 years, $1.45 million per.
Just said that.
Replacement.
That's insane.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's what happened.
Very fluid situation.
No, it's all fluid. Like I said, don't worry about it. No, it's totally fine. Because I know we're all in this room, and
the Leafs signed Robidoff for 3 years, $3 million per. That's, I think, pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I'm seeing Matt Molson to the Sabres. It's just a rumor at this point, but that looks like that's going to happen.
I'm hearing that as well.
It's for sure. I think that's happening. Yeah, that's been another really well kept non-secret. Basically, when he was traded from there, I was told that he said he loved it there, and they said, "Well, we love you here too, but go. We're going to get something for you, and then come back." So, Matt Molson.
I just retweeted probably the photo of the day for Minnesota Wild. It's got Zach Parise in North Dakota, Ryan Suter in the USA, and Thomas Vanek in a Minnesota Gophers jersey.
This is probably the most famous Minnesota Golden Gopher that they've ever had.
Definitely, he's up there with guys that have gone to the NHL and been superstars. And the crazy thing is, he's an Austrian. He came on the heels of Doug Woog, not wanting to take players outside of Minnesota for so long, which kind of got him run out of the job.
Yeah, 6.5 for Vanek. Wow. 5.5 first year, 6.5 second year, 7.5 third year. Dominic Moore, 2 years for the Rangers.
Good for him. I'm glad he's back in New York too.
I have a very frustrated Islander fan base right now with Vanek signing in Minnesota, and when Matt Molson signs in Buffalo, I'll probably have to turn my phone off.
Keep an eye on Jerome McGinley to the Wild as well. He's a longtime Flame, so maybe he doesn't want to come here, but I believe that he's been on the shopping list, and I think he would play third line with Eric Haula and Nino Niederreiter, and that would be a nasty top 9.
Here's something interesting. This is from our buddy Kevin Gibson, who used to work at Hockey Buzz back in the day. Now is at TSN. Last year, $340 million in UFAs were signed on the first day of free agency, $340 million. That was until midnight, all the way through tonight. This year, already $314 million. So in less than 2 hours, we did what they did in 12 hours last year.
Insanity.
It is insanity, and it's. I think some of it does have to do with the teams talking ahead of time. I think also I do believe that the teams being together at the draft just like a couple days ago also plays into all this, because it really felt like one long day from the beginning of the draft through now. I really think that.
I would be very surprised if Komarov is not signed with the Leafs after. A guy like Dominic, if they were in on Dominic Moore and didn't get Dominic Moore, then I think they probably, even though Moore is a center and Komarov is a winger, I think they want that feisty guy, which Dominic Moore is. I think they want that feisty guy that Komarov can be. I'd be surprised if they don't go the extra length here to get him under contract.
Especially with the loss of Derek Dorsett, you need some of that attitude, I think, definitely, for sure.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Okay, let's see.
Nick, what are you hearing about Verbata?
Oh, I did hear something about Verbata just a second ago. Hold on, let me think. I heard Montreal was in on Verbata. Thanks for bringing that up.
Brett Sutter signs a 2-way deal with Minnesota.
I like that signing as well. That allows them an opportunity to maybe move Kyle Brodzniak from the fourth line, making $2.5 million.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so Montreal and Verbata, good call. Because I had just gotten that text, and right before the Vanek thing happened, and I forgot about it. So Montreal's in on Verbata.
Toronto is trading one of two guys. They're either trading Phaneuf or they're trading Cody Franzen. I think it's more likely that they could find a home for Franzen because his contract, he was only paid $2 million last year, and he, had a pretty good offensive year, and for teams that might be cap strapped, they could sign him for 1 or 2 years at probably around $3 million, whereas Phaneuf has the long-term deal.
Yeah.
And I think they could get a lot for Cody Franzen. He's 26 years old. He has a big shot from the point, right-hand shot defenseman. If they don't trade Phaneuf, Franzen is going to be on the move.
Yep, I keep hearing Tampa or the Islanders for Dion Phaneuf. So, so I really do believe this is tied in with Niskanen.
Because the Islanders, I'm just doing the math now. The Islanders have 10 defensemen on one-way contracts. Something's got to give here.
Yeah.
The Rangers have signed Mike Koska, former Blackhawk, Lightning, Leaf.
Solid 7th defenseman.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why is Tampa so quiet?
That's a great question.
They are just sitting back. I wonder if they've really put a big contract in front of Niskanen and just they're hoping.
Oh, I think that's what's happened. I do. I think that's exactly what happened. And this is a situation that teams hate too, because they could end up with nothing, but I do think they've put a huge offer in front of Niskanen, from what I've told. And we've heard even on Twitter they were saying $7 million a year for 7 years.
I think Niskanen fits in very well in Tampa, and he could match up with Victor Hedman and be the right shot, be protected a little bit by Hedman's size and ability to move bodies.
Yeah, he does, but at the same time, I just wonder how good he really is.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Well, now they're saying Molson could be going to New Jersey. I just got that.
That's weird. I don't know. That's just an odd signing for me.
There is definitely
as odd as Mike Ryder to the Devils was. I mean, or our friend from San Jose. God, I'm losing my mind. Ryan Clough.
Yeah, Ryan Clough. Yeah,
that was a very strange signing for Lou Lamoriello. I mean, to me, Ryan Clough, and he didn't have a very good year. I didn't understand that signing. It just didn't fit.
Molson needs someone to get him the puck. He's not someone who can create his own shot. So I don't understand if he went to New Jersey. I think
it's down to Buffalo and New Jersey for Molson.
Okay. I think on the subject of Tampa Bay, I mean, if they can get Niskanen and maybe get Jerome McGinley as well to shore up that right side, that top six. I mean, that's a dangerous team right there. Because you think about the strides that Victor Hedman made this past year as a legitimate defenseman in this league.
Yeah.
With Jason Garrison as well. I mean, this could be an offensive powerhouse for sure.
Oh yeah.
So that's an interesting one, I think, personally.
Wait till they get and the kid they drafted last year, right? So I mean, they Druin.
Yep.
Druin into Tampa. You may have said that. I'm sorry if you did. But yeah, this is absolutely a big. I mean, Tampa was a good team last year that just sort of had bad luck at the end, and they were a good team though all year, and it's a bad division in a way. I mean, beyond Boston, it was a bad division. So yeah, that's why I think Florida kind of thinks they have a chance, because to get to the top 3 of that division is not impossible for Florida.
Right.
A local Buffalo television station is reporting that the Sabres are close to a deal with Molson. So
yeah, but so we're at it's funny because I talked to somebody really close to that. That's interesting. So yeah, I mean, this could just be negotiations too, as they go. But hey,
one thing I
have to step off. I just wanted to say goodbye to everyone. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good job today.
A lot of fun.
Day, Dan.
I'll be talking to you guys soon. Hopefully my I haven't been attacked by my fan base, but
we'll get you on we'll get you on the podcast soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Really appreciate it.
Colorado has signed Bruno Gervais to a 1-year deal.
I can tell you. Okay, I'm leaving right now before I say anything. Actually, wait, hold on a second before I sign off. Here is a Bruno Gervais Bridgeport Sound Tigers game use stick.
There you go.
There you go. It's on my wall here. So there you go.
And he hit the cymbal too. I could hear the cymbal
in the background too. See you guys.
See ya.
See you, Dan.
Wow.
The going on Matt Molson here, I've gotten to know him a little bit, stories and whatnot, and talking with him. He's a guy who, when he finds a city, he loves it. He's very committed to staying in the city and being with an organization So it wouldn't surprise if he went back to Buffalo. I think his heart was in Long Island. He was heartbroken when he got traded. So it'd be interesting. But I've noticed that he is a player that when he finds a home, he likes it there. He doesn't like change, and he likes being situated in a certain city.
And it's amazing how many people who go to Buffalo find that as well, even if they're not that kind of person. Buffalo is the kind of place where you can check out anytime you want. You can never leave. Buffalo is that kind of a town, and people, as Mike can tell you, who still lives in Buffalo. Yeah. So yeah.
And I never leave.
And you'll never leave.
I was in Philadelphia last weekend.
I know where we noted that there's 4 single women for every single man in Philadelphia, Mike, but not.
I'm moving, and I saw most of them. No, never mind.
Yeah, not at the draft of the media. You won't see many of them, but other places, yes. So yeah, oh my gosh, holy cow!
Have we heard anything about Del Zotto?
Nothing yet.
No.
And again,
I'm a curious one too.
Very.
Again, I think that, and Ak, you can shoot this down. I think the fact that Del Zotto probably didn't think he was going to be not qualified. And the fact that his agent probably was caught, I'm sure they weren't doing their due diligence in terms of talking to teams. He's some guy that after the first wave of defensive signings might be somebody who finds a home then. But I'd be surprised if he signs today because I don't think they were prepared for this. I mean, and Ehrhoff is different. I mean, Ehrhoff was bought out on Sunday, and I think because he was willing to take a 1-year deal, he was able to sign pretty quickly.
Possibly. The other thing is, I would imagine that Nashville sort of had given Del Zotto a sort of a heads up on this, though. Usually that's the case. So, some people are saying that Niskanen has priced himself a little high. It's not a surpriser, but hey, just saying it.
But that's logic done today. I mean,
exactly.
We may question the deals, we may question the sanity of them, the validity, the metrics, and everything, but this is your time to cash in a lottery ticket, so you got to do it. I mean, I don't fault the players for cashing in. If someone's going to spend the money, you better take it. This is your shot, and good on them. I mean, it's a lifetime of sacrifice to get to this point, and whether it's the right move or not, we'd all take the same thing if someone put that cash down on us. So, I'm happy for them. I mean, even guys like Tanner Glass, Chris Thorburn, whoever was pretty hard on about last night. I mean, I'm still happy for the guy, and I think we all have to remember that. For some of these guys, this changes their entire life now, and that's a thing for them to always remember and be happy about.
Oh, I'm with you 100%. This is their one shot. I mean, they're not gonna. They can always get hurt. I've talked to players. They're surprised. $49 million can go a long way for not just you, but for your extended family and everything. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal, and more power to them. I never have a problem. And, this is the entertainment industry. This money's here because it's being generated by somebody. That's the end of the day. So, that's what you have to keep telling yourself,
Yeah, David Clarkson's the whipping boy of the hockey world. But
No, not of the hockey world, of the Toronto hockey world.
Yeah, we'd all sign that contract if that was put in front of our face. Doesn't matter if we're from Mimico or Edmonton, for that matter. So it is that, like Pete said, it is perspective there, and you have to remember that. And I mean, these teams are willing to pay it. The revenue is there. The cap did go down, or didn't go up as much as they thought it was going to, but I mean, it's there, and it's probably going to go up.
Yeah, and it's really. I mean, remember now that because of the last CBA too. I mean, teams are the reason Nashville's able to do what they're doing now is because of the new CBA. Because they're getting a bigger percentage of the money back. So,
Derek McKenzie to the Florida Panthers, 3 years, $3.9 million total.
Okay.
So now they have McKenzie and Thornton, so they're muscling up a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see who else is out there that we really are interested in talking about here, because there are some players we haven't even discussed. I'm going to go through my list. We talked about a lot of them here, but let's see. So far we're talking Steve Ott. Okay, so Steve Ott we haven't really talked about very much. He's out there still. I've heard the Flyers. I know the Flyers had him here, so he was around here, but he's a great pickup. And I also know Colorado likes Steve Ott too, and that to me is another kind of player that Patrick Waugh would want to bring in. So Steve Ott's one of them. We have.
With Steve Ott, I mean, I know that his name has been mentioned in Buffalo as possibly coming back. I'm not sure if that's going to work now with them signing
Here we
Gianta.
go. Olsen to Buffalo, 5 years, $5 million. Elliot Friedman.
Woohoo!
There you go.
Take that one. Thanks.
5 years, $5 million.
I mean, if you break it, can you call breaking a trade like 2 months ago? But I did say that was going to happen, so I'm happy about that.
You definitely did, and again, that makes a lot of sense for Buffalo because with Molson for most of the season, they still finished in 30th place. And not to say that Matt Molson is not a good player. He is a good player. He is a good complementary player. But the problem is that he's not going to be a difference maker to make them win enough to not be bad. I think they've added a couple veteran players that will help this young core grow. But I still think without Miller, without Vanek, without Ehrhoff, who was their leading minutes defenseman playing in terms of minutes, the Sabres, and right now, they've traded for Josh Georges, they've added Gianta, and they've re-signed Molson. They're not going to be better than they were at the end of the year last year. So
yeah, you're right.
This is the perfect storm for Tim Murray.
Right.
Sam Reinhart's probably going to end up playing in the Western Hockey League and playing for the World Juniors for Canada next year. Probably will not play for the Sabres because they want to develop them, and and they will have a bad season and have a chance to draft McDavid or Eichel next June
or both if the Islanders have a bad season. Yeah. But Pete, I want to talk to you about the other kind of elephant in this room around today has been, Evander Kane and Dustin Byfuglien, who have not been mentioned at all today, really.
I think I put out a tweet earlier saying that, there were rumors the Jets were looking at some left wingers, and I said, well, why would you look at a second line caliber left winger if you had Evander Kane, unless?
Right.
And frankly, there's a rumor that Hextall had made an offer to the Jets for Kane, and Chevy countered with something quite absurd that no one would do. But that's sort of where he sees Kane, right? He knows that the potential going someplace else is huge upside, and he's got to ask for that back. As for Byfuglien, I'm sort of confused by it. He's probably the most popular Jets player, but his contract ends when he's 31, and if you look at the list of players who put up his numbers after age 31, it's Hall of Fame. I mean, is Dustin Byfuglien that kind of player? Is he that caliber of player? I don't know, particularly with his fitness, his size, his knees.
Well, that's the thing, right? And at the draft, that's what people were talking about. Real quick, Havlat is signed with the Devils. In the meantime, 1-year deal. I was told, so we'll see if I can find out more of that soon. But yeah, 1-year deal with the Devils. But yeah, on Byfuglien, the big thing at the draft was really, does he want to play forward? Does he want to play defense? I mean, from talking to him before, at least in the past, in the distant past, which was the last time I really talked to him, which was during those finals of the Flyers Chicago, he wanted to play defense. He wasn't a forward in his mind at all, and he likes to play defense more. That, I think, is something that makes him a lot more valuable as a defender. Yeah. But and then also, I mean, the other thing is there's this bad reputation he has about he's not in shape. I know the not being in shape is not a reputation thing, but the fact that because he hasn't been in shape, but the fact that he's not popular with his players is with his teammates is totally false.
No, you know what? You rip Dustin Byfuglien from that dressing room, you've got something to figure out.
Yeah.
That's a serious thing that has to be considered. So I understand why he's kept. I just don't think you'll ever get to a point with Byfuglien where you can sell as high as you can now. I just don't think he'll have any higher value unless something with the Jets changes. Kane, I think you could probably get a higher value. But here's the issue with Kane. What do you get for him? You're not going to get another left winger for him. you're not going to trade one left winger for another unless you throw in a significant pick or another prospect or asset. So you're really sort of trading Kane from to fill a different hole in your roster. And that leads me to the quality for quantity deal. And I don't like those kinds of deals. I think you got it. You go for the best player available. And if Chevy can't get a best player available for a hole on his team, I don't think you trade Kane until he tells you I'm not re-signing in his contract year.
Havlat signed 1 year, $1.5 million with the Devils.
Yep.
I think that's a very savvy Lou Lamoriello deal. Havlat's a guy that we associate with some negative attitude stuff, some inability to stay healthy here in Minnesota, and we actually got more production out of Danny Heatley from the point that trade happened for Havlat to San Jose.
Here's a little nugget on Niskanen. According to a report out of Detroit, he has been told the Wings that he is going elsewhere, so he's not going to the Wings.
I've heard that too, but I don't buy that completely. I'm not sure that that's true.
Cody McCormick signed with the Sabres 3 years, $4.5 million. So $1.5 million for Cody McCormick, who last year was sent down a couple times and cleared waivers, and then got traded to Minnesota at the deadline. So I think he's a beneficiary of the Sabres needing to get to the cap floor.
Cody McCormick, though, Cody McCormick, when he came over as kind of a throw-in in that deal, he skated. He contributed in the forecheck. He played with Matt Cook and Kyle Brozniak on the fourth line, and he contributed a little bit. He definitely didn't fight anybody, which I thought was interesting because I thought that's what we were getting him to do. But he contributed in the forecheck, and he's a competent fourth liner.
Don't underestimate the impact that Yager had on getting Havlat to New Jersey.
Oh, good point. Good point.
I mean, anyway,
good call, boss man.
And it's a one.
Log off. Have a great Free Agent Day. Happy Canada Day to everyone, and to our American friends. You guys have the best of time on the 4th of July, and all the best to you and your country.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate it. Same to you and your country, and thanks for being good neighbors all these years.
You too, guys. Take care, guys.
All right, we'll see you soon.
See ya.
Thanks very much.
Matt Molson has a no-trade clause with the Sabres, not surprisingly.
That 5 years, $25 million for Molson when the Wild got 3 for $18 out of Thomas Vanek makes me love Thomas Vanek signing.
I don't know. I'm not convinced that someone else isn't. People are just thinking that Niskanen now is going to go to Tampa. I'm not convinced that there's not other teams out there as well that we just haven't heard about in this one, because what I was told is a very confusing situation, which means more than just 2 teams, more than just I still think Washington's a factor in this one too.
Well, maybe not after signing Orpik.
I know, but yeah, I mean that's a good point, but I'm not so sure. I also hear Marty Brodeur could go down pretty soon.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
Niskanen's agent Neil Sheehy has an office in Bloomington. Same agent as Ryan Suter and Zach Parise, and he has been in contact with the Wild, but I believe the years and the amount has put the Wild out of the running.
According to Brian Lawton, sounds like the San Jose Sharks have very quietly worked themselves into the Matt Niskanen sweepstakes.
Yep. There you go. Just felt like there was another team involved that we were missing because...
And that makes sense because they traded Brad Stewart.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
And that's the kind. The Sharks have to do something here. Remember that. I mean, the Sharks they kept their GM, they kept their coach, and they said they're going to make these massive changes. They still have Marleau, they still have Thornton as of now. They haven't done anything yet. So yeah.
The question is, are they the ones that, if they don't get Niskanen, are they the ones that get traded for Phaneuf?
No.
Okay.
I don't think the Sharks will get in on Phaneuf.
Because there have been long rumors of Phaneuf going to San Jose, but it was always tied to a Thornton deal or a Marlowe deal. Elliot Friedman reporting that restricted free agent Marcus Foligno has re-signed with the Sabres, 2 years, $3.75 million.
That tells me the Sabres are done signing UFAs because they've gone and moved on to their RFAs, which is, so they might have just after most, and they're like, okay, that's all, we're good. That's what I'm thinking.
And they may be close enough now to the cap floor that they can just take care of their own guys and be close enough to be able to get there. I
just have a feeling that Iginla's going to go a while. I don't think it's going to be today.
So
we know this story, Ty.
He waited till the 5th last year, so I mean.
Right.
We'll see.
Right. It seems familiar to me that he would do that.
Well, I think his best chance is with Boston. Just based on the road that it takes you to the Cup. Because like we said earlier, the Atlantic is not a strong division. But it honestly comes back to what he's willing to do. Is he willing to take another year, a deal like he did this past year, or does he want that security of a multi-year deal? Because a lot can happen in a year. Next year he'll be 38 years old. So if he takes that 1 year deal, the money won't be as high and the years won't be as long. So this is an interesting point. We do have to remember that this is a player that between the 2 lockouts, he's lost a lot of money. So maybe he's not in the mindset of taking another bonus heavy deal.
That's a great point. He is one of the more affected players in the lockouts. Absolutely. Yeah, that's as long as it's somewhere he can win, I think he's got to go someplace where he feels like he can win because he's not gonna. That definitely is in his mindset. I mean, that was Ryan Miller's mindset. Miller goes to Vancouver, so maybe Iginla thinks, okay, we can go to Vancouver too, because it sounds like Vancouver, Colorado for Iginla. But I still would like to see at the end of the day him going back to Boston. I liked him in Boston. I don't want to keep losing all these good players of the Western Conference, like you said earlier, Ty, because it's absolutely true. The Eastern Conference is getting smoked today.
Yeah, it's bad. It's that power shift. It's funny. But yeah, I mean, there are teams. I mean, you look in the Atlantic and you look in the East as a whole. Detroit needs to get better. They need to figure out what they're doing. They're committed to their young guys, or they got to get some complementary pieces. They can't rely on Danny Alfredson to come back and play 40 games for them to be healthy for an entire season. They can't do it. So and that was something that Mike Babcock stressed at the end of the year. Their team was eliminated in Boston. I was there his final address, and he said we need to figure out what we're doing. He goes, we need to get Franzen healthy, or we need to move on. We need to find something that can help us out. A guy like Iginla helps them out, but at what cost? A guy like Strallman helps them out, but can they afford it? Things like that. So Detroit's another team, too, in the East that you need something from these guys, or the East is going to continue to get weaker.
Bob McKenzie is reporting that the Iginla is going to be a 3-year deal, and the finalists are Tampa Bay, Colorado, and Vancouver.
Yeah.
I don't see Tampa doing that, but, maybe. It's very possible.
Ty, it's been interesting to see Detroit be such a powerhouse and be so highly thought of and miss on so many free agents. When they end up with Stephen Weiss, and they end up with Legwand, and they end up with Alfredson. These are talented guys, but these aren't the guys in the prime of their career. They're a little past the point, or they're a little bit flawed in what they're bringing in. I think that's been very compelling to see happen.
Very compelling.
I mean, you think about Detroit used to be the old man's league. Everyone would go there when they wanted the cup late in their career. And then the young guys became the old guys, too. Datsuk, Zetterberg, Franz, these guys are getting older now. They're not the young guys that they were when you get veterans to come in. So it's funny how that sort of changed.
Ty, let me ask you a question. This is a complete flyer here, but we talked about Peter Chiarelli having a penchant for ex-Ottawa Senators, and we met. He brought Wade Redden in when he was in the minors for a number of years. They were always in on Daniel Alfredson whenever there was talk. Do you think if Iginla leaves, which it looks like it's going to, do you think they take a flyer, a 1-year contract on Danny Heatley?
That's interesting. I mean, that's an interesting question. I think it would be a very sort of desperate move, I guess, on their part, but that's where they are right now. They are in a desperate position. where they don't have the biggest say in what they want to do money-wise. For me, I think, speaking of Ottawa, I think if Iginla goes and they can't find anyone that they're sold on, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to re-engage on some talks for Bobby Ryan. If they can move a piece or two, help Ottawa get to the cap floor. They're almost there right now, but they could use a Chris Kelly, for example, a guy with a $3 million salary who used to play in Ottawa, who has a no-trade clause, a player like that. But I don't know about Heatley. I think that'd be a bit of a stretch for them. As much as they'd like to do it, worst case scenario, I think they're committed to their youth or a trade.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a flyer, but I'm looking at the fact that Iginla.
Good name to throw out there because Heatley is such an enigma, but if you put him on a really good team like Boston, you have to think to yourself, okay, suddenly he can just do one thing.
Right.
And yeah, it does change things a lot. It does change. It's definitely not a bad idea.
The thing, I'm sorry, Ek. So the thing about Heatley too is his production fell off of the map, and he was making $7.5 million, and there was just savagery from the Minnesota Wild fans. But in the room, he was a gentleman and he was a professional, and it shows that.
Ginla signed in Colorado. Told you it'd take a while. I meant 7 or 8 minutes. Yeah. So.
And I guarantee Heatley gets another shot with somebody. It'll be a 1-year deal, and he scores goals. He's cement on ice, but he scores some goals.
Leo Komarov is returning to Toronto. According to Chris Johnston from Sportsnet, he will sign a 4-year contract with the Maple Leafs.
Wow.
He's a good player.
Yep.
In a weird way, isn't this how the Iginla story is supposed to end for the Boston Bruins?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, he goes to Colorado.
They almost get him in 2013. They don't. They go, all right, we're gonna give him this in the summer. They do. He signs a friendly deal. He reaps $3.7 million in cap penalties. Then goes, hey guys, I'll see you later. Off to Colorado. This is the way it ends.
That's awesome. I'm with you. Sorry, my lighting's making me look extremely angry, but it's gotten very red in here. I don't know why. I'm not as mad as I appear when I'm back here.
You're not angry. Yes, you are angry, Act, because you owe me tons of cookies.
Here's the secret, Mike. I'm always angry.
Yeah. And Josh Rimmer texted me. He says, you owe me cookies.
Yeah. Josh has lost 45 pounds. I'm not going to get that man cookies. That'd be a horrible thing.
Diabetic. Can they be diabetic cookies?
Sure.
According to
reached the floor, by the way, Florida's still looking up at the floor.
According to a report from CSN Philly, the Flyers had a deal with Nashville for Vinny Lecavalier, but it has fallen through apparently.
Yeah, that was going on since yesterday, and there's a whole. It fell through not because Vinny didn't want to go there, not because of Sean Avery or anything like that. It fell through because of the cap recapturing, all sorts of other things that happen in this deal that they couldn't figure out. So I'm not convinced 100% that it still can't happen, but we'll see. So Niskanen's the big name right now, and I know that some people were calling us the pregame show for the U.S. Olympic team because I think it's when we'll probably go up to 3 o'clock and then call it here because it is slowing down. But I would like Niskanen to get done first. And there's going to be something special in all of your stockings for doing the show today, Ty, and everybody. You could find something in your mail. Yeah, and I really appreciate you guys stepping up and doing this for sure. So, all right, so half enough.
Because listening to me talk for 3 hours would have been pretty boring. But so thank you.
God, yes. That would have been. So let's see where we are. So we've got Niskanen. We haven't seen anything. Winnipeg has still been quiet with Evander Kane and Byfuglien, which I'm not surprised about because I think Byfuglien is sort of he's going to be your Plan B type guy. Although I
Okay.
mean, I think Dustin Byfuglien is going to be a hell of a player wherever he goes, and he's the kind of guy that I think that someone's going to just make out on. And I know that, I know Philly's got interest in him, and I would love to see it. So,
Okay,
Evander
so
Kane different. Yep, go Mike.
no, just for the Leaf fans out there, the Chris Johnston reports that the contract for Leo Komarov is 4 years at a little under $3 million per. That's more than I thought that they would spend on him, but I think it's the fact that they were buying out unrestricted years. Plus, I think that they are going to give him more of a
Let's get
not of a
yeah.
not a fourth line role. He's going to be more of a third line guy. So
That's a good deal for him. I mean, and you think about it, like that's Bolin or $5 million. Yeah, this is a good deal. It's a good deal for them.
I have to give the Leafs credit in this sense, and I'll depart from some of my brethren in the Toronto media who just seem to like to slag the Leafs constantly. They passed up on the opportunity to pay Bolin overpayment, which I think if they had signed him for less than $5 million, I still think it would have been an overpayment. He goes 5.5 to Florida, that would have been an overpayment. I think Mason Raymond getting over $3 million, he deserved it, but I don't think it was what Toronto needed. They're probably going to lose Kuhlman. He's going to probably make a pretty decent chunk of change in Pittsburgh if he signs there. They got Robidoux for $3 million, and they got Komarov for less than $3 million. They're not exactly spending willy-nilly, so I think Dave Nonis and Brendan Shanahan are being pretty disciplined here, and they might have enough room later on after all these other free agents fall through that they can find a couple bargains, and they'll have the money to be able to sign those guys. So
Mike,
far, I think the Leafs are doing pretty well.
Mike, let me ask you this: Does Komarov pair up and match on a line with Clarkson? Are those the two wings?
Yeah, I think so. And when you have a player like Komarov, he is a spark plug. And Clarkson, inherently Clarkson is a guy. He can score goals, but he's also a guy who, when he gets his motor going, he's hitting everything in sight. That's what Komarov is. But if you put Komarov and Clarkson together, I think you have a very effective third line for the Leafs. I think that is the plan. I think they're going to put Komarov on the third line with Clarkson and probably Peter Holland, or they might go out and sign themselves a third line center. It could be, they were trying to sign Dominic Moore. It could be Steve Ott. It could be Brian Boyle. If it's somebody like that, and they probably could sign that guy for less than $3 million or around $3 million, then you really have something there. But good signing by the Maple Leafs. I know a lot of Leafs fans who are very happy that they have their idol, Leo Komarov, back in the fold.
Something's up in Nashville, guys. I don't know what. I'm working on it right now. So I'm thinking it's Joe Thornton, but I'm not sure. So we'll stay with it.
So
Peter Regan signed, by the way, according to Bob McKenzie, back in Chicago.
Here in Minnesota, to talk about the butterfly effect of Vanek. Now I think we can look at the possibility of maybe trades. Maybe adding a bridge veteran defenseman to play with Suter. It's a very interesting blue line for the Wild, being that they have Jared Spurgeon and they have Jonas Brodin, who are both undersized, more finesse, more possession drivers, and neither one of them really matches up well with Suter, just because Suter tends to be more strength and finesse rather than boom and hammer type. So we've wondered here if Fletcher would possibly move Jared Spurgeon in a trade, if he would include Matthew Dumba, if he would swing for the fences once he figured out what was going to take place with Vanek.
Ty, Fluto Shinzawa is reporting that with Iginla likely gone, that what's going to happen is that they're going to move Louis Eriksson up to the top line with Krejci and Lucic.
Yeah, they did it for a game last year where Iginla was out with an injury. Eriksson actually had probably his best game of the regular season during that. He actually had 4 points. He played well. It's not the same physicality along the boards like that you'd like with Iginla and Lucic going at it. But Eriksson, I think, would benefit from that a lot. You really started to see the real Louis after the Olympics when he played the top 6 minutes with Sweden. He looked like the healthy Louis that Bruins fans were sold. And I think that would benefit him a lot. Keep in mind here that the Bruins, they do have a kid in the minor leagues, Alexander Kokochev. He's a Russian kid. He used to play his junior hockey rather with the Windsor Spitfires, and he's a very talented scorer. He can play center and wing. Down in Providence, he was part of the 1-2 combo with Ryan Spooner. The idea here could be that you bump Eriksson up, you sign Riley Smith, and then your third line becomes Soderberg, Spooner, and Kokochev. It'd be two young guys, but it is a lot of the speed that they've been looking for, and most importantly, it's cheap entry-level contracts there.
Yeah.
Couple reports here saying that Toronto is not done for the day. I mean, that's an understatement because they really haven't gotten started other than Robidas and Komarov, which
every trade deadline on UFA day is the same for you, Mike. It's a shame. I've been through this so many times. It's so frustrating.
I'm not frustrated.
Good.
I think I'm fairly pleased with in terms of the prudence of their moves. I think they didn't go out and spend big money on a Paul Stastny, which $7 million. I like Paul Stastny as a player. $7 million. I mean, I said a long time ago he was going to get over the contract that he was making with Colorado. Nobody seemed to think that, but you looked at the market and you knew that he was going to get big money because there just wasn't any other big money center out there. But I just didn't think Toronto was in a position to spend that kind of money on a center like Stastny. Chris Johnston's reporting $16 million over 3 years for Jerome McGinley. So he got his $5 million.
Bruins weren't coming close to matching that. No way.
Yep. I think the Bruins were hoping he would take a hometown discount, take like a 1 year, $3 million deal, take less.
Yeah.
Because I mean, didn't they get penalized around $4 million for the performance bonuses?
Yeah, it's just under 3.8. That basically wipes out the Mark Savard, long-term injured reserve because he's about 4.08, I believe. So that almost wipes that out completely. So they're in a tight spot. But I mean, if you can get Torrey Krug and Riley Smith to bridge deals, you can, and you move maybe a Campbell or a McQuaid, which is something that I've been told is on the table, that's being considered. They'll be okay. It'll be tight, but they'll have a little bit of wiggle room, especially with guys like Justin Florek ready to step in on the bottom six.
There's a report here that Anton Strawman is signing with Tampa Bay, but it's not a confirmed
if that
source.
If that happens, then I do believe you'll see San Jose get Niskanen. I've heard the Predators are close, very, very close, like I just said, to doing something. It could be Vinny Lecavalier. It still could be Vinny Lecavalier that the Lightning get. Could be Joe Thornton. It could be Rabada. So those are the three names I've heard right now. I'm trying to look more into that, but
according to Elliot Friedman, the deal for Strawman is 5 years at $4 million per with the Lightning.
It's a good value.
Gentlemen, I just wanted to point out that I have accomplished this right here. My name is underneath where my face was. It only took me like 3 hours.
What's going on?
I accomplished the hashtag for my name below my face.
Oh, the lower third.
Oh, very nicely done. Sorry, yes, I appreciate
finally, it. Near the end of our show, you finally got the lower third up.
You now see Tony Dean.
Yes. Pierre LeBrun is reporting that Niskanen is getting close, but not done as of yet. Maybe the Strawman deal hustles it up a little bit.
Could be the Cavier. Could be. I think people are trying to get this thing done before.
Is Strawman a Swede?
He sure is a Swede.
He sure is.
There's his pairing with Victor Hedman in Tampa Bay. I like that signing.
Yeah, and he's a right-hand shot defenseman, so.
Because here's the interesting thing: we have Joe Thornton and we have Patrick Morello have not been moved, right? Going to I can't help but think these things are all tied together somehow. Like I can't help but think that they are trying to get rid of one of Thornton or Marlowe before they make this major move with Niskanen.
In a non-player transaction, the Hurricanes have named former Atlanta Thrashers GM Don Waddell as their team president, who was in Pittsburgh as part of Ray Shiro's staff.
Yep.
20 million over 5 years for Stroman. Yeah, I mean, if you compare Stroman's contract to some of the other contracts, it's pretty reasonable. I mean, $4 million a year for 5 years for Stroman as compared to 5.5 for Brooks Orpik. Wow.
I know. Right?
I still can't get over that contract. I still think right now that contract is the worst one that was signed today.
Yeah, I mean it's up there. One of the things, like Ty, going back to your point about the Western Conference getting stronger, you could also actually say the Western Conference has signed a lot of bad contracts today too. In a situation where the West is probably and I think this call comes back to a lot of teams in the West feeling that they're closer to actually being able to win. So they go in today and then they make these, bolder moves. Where Eastern teams, a lot of them don't really think that they're that close, so they're kind of laying back. This is all part of the ebb and flow of circle of life of hockey, because this will end up biting the teams in the West, and the Eastern teams will get better because they'll go with younger players, and this is just how it works. But
circle of life. What is this, the Lion King?
Yes.
Well, I also think of I think of the Western Conference, and the LA Kings, they won the Cup in 5 games. That you look at the Western Conference, to get to the finals in the West, you're going to get beat up. Those are 3 physical rounds that you will play just to get there. Maybe in the Eastern Conference, these teams with those younger guys, they'll be a bit more sort of, I don't want to say in shape per se, but they'll have less bruises by the end of the 3rd round than the teams in the West. So you never know how it all shakes out in the end, but that's something to consider as well, I think.
Gentlemen, one of the interesting symptoms of realignment, it was a very good thing for the Western Conference having to do with like travel time, but then for anybody to get out of the Pacific Division, you have those 3 teams in California that are just loaded to bear, and they beat up on each other. Now for the Central Division, every team in the Central Division has gotten better today, and it's been an arms race. And the playoff format and the change in realignment has really made it so that the Western Conference is competing against the Western Conference specifically for players to improve, to make it a more compelling in-season battle.
For those interested, Argentina won in the World Cup so they will face the winner of USA and Belgium.
They will beat the winner of USA and Belgium. I'm just kidding.
It is Argentina. They are pretty good.
Yeah, they are.
It was wore my Team USA jersey for this.
Yeah, I can't. My daughter gets back from camp. Everybody's fired up, but it's like
actually they won in extra time in the 118th minute, so they beat Switzerland in extra time. That's 2 games in a row that winning goals were scored in extra time. Interesting.
Steve Bernier has been signed by the Devils, proving once again that you can actually take a horrible 5-minute major penalty, cost your team the Stanley Cup, and still get a contract. Bernier's back in New Jersey. Wow.
It sounds like it's very, very, very. I mean, from all the indications here, it sounds like Niskanen's going to sign any minute here.
Yeah, I think that's what we're sort of waiting on. I'd like that to happen before 3 o'clock, guys. That'd be good. Just pick it up. Come on, it's only
I think that Colorado's having they're having a rough off season. Just to be honest about it, they have this contentious Ryan O'Reilly contract deal. They lost Stasny. They signed Jerome McGinley, and I'll always be, more than respectful of Jerome McGinley. I think he's a great presence. I think he can still contribute, but I don't know that they've gotten better.
Yeah, I mean they've gotten different. Put it that way. They've added some experience. They needed some experience. They haven't gotten their D-man yet that they need. That's really what they need. This is like You know, that's a big thing for them at this point. I don't think they have gotten much better. You know, but that's yeah, I think
And they caught lightning in the bottle last year, Eck. I mean, they won the division.
well, Doug Wilson, by the way, let's just throw this out there. Kevin Kersh, who used to work in Philly, just has his quote. It just came out right now. He's a beat writer for San Jose Sharks Online.com or CSN out there actually. Doug Wilson, there will be a time and place for us to be active in the free agent market, but it's certainly not now. So that makes you curious about Matt Niskanen going to San Jose, doesn't it? I mean, he would not say that.
It makes me curious who's accountable in San Jose, because they have this epic collapse. They keep McClellan. Wilson keeps his job. They're going to switch the players around, but they can't move Thornton. They can't move Marlowe without their permission. They haven't been able to move them yet, and they haven't made any sort of signing.
Nick Kiprios is reporting, with Strawman gone to Lightning, many suggesting Niskanen now a potential fit with Colorado.
Well, that makes there we go. They haven't gotten their defenseman, like I said, and that's Niskanen's a definite fit with Colorado. And Colorado has money to spend for now, but a 7-year deal is hard for Colorado to do, because I mean they're gonna have players they're gonna have to sign, and down the line that 7 years is a tough one for Colorado. I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah, well, and front and center in terms of that is Ryan O'Reilly. I mean, and now that Stastny is gone, it'll be intriguing to see whether there's any problem getting him locked up in a long-term deal, or if there's still going to be a problem between the two sides. I mean, if there'll be an offer sheet, or if they can. He wants to make more than Matt Duchene, and that's been clear for a while, and they are obviously hesitating to pay him more than Matt Duchene. I think in the end he's going to end up leaving there. It probably won't be this year, maybe won't be next year, but as soon as he's a UFA, I think he's gone.
They're running out of options. They're going to have to pay him to stay more than Duchene, because what are their options? Is there a market for him in trade? Maybe.
But they want the thing is that they're striving to maintain that salary structure there, and they want Duchene as the number one center to be the highest paid guy. So everybody needs to fall behind him in terms of salary. Ryan O'Reilly played the wing for them last year on Duchene's line. Now with Stastny gone, more than likely Ryan O'Reilly moves to center. If you're paying him as your number two center, you're not going to pay him as much as they're paying Duchene, who's the number one center. But the thing is, I think O'Reilly deserves to be paid as much, but they don't seem to want to do it.
And that leads me to believe that they take issue with Ryan O'Reilly's personality. They make Landeskog the captain, which kind of signals.
So I don't. From talking to people there, I don't think it's an issue with Ryan O'Reilly's personality. I think it's an issue with his business sense, or not his business sense, but his business acumen, or the way he handles things is for sure a problem. But he's a very popular player on that team, and a very popular player among his teammates, who all seem to have no problem. And there's definitely, players get that, right? They get the idea that this is what you have to do. So,
Pierre LeBrun corrects the amount of the Strawman contract. It was $22.5 million over 5 years, which is 4.5, not 4. Elliot Friedman reporting that Zach Redmond is signed with Colorado, 2 years, $1.5 million total. So now, yeah.
Something's up. I just got another text to look out for Fnuff again. 1 second.
Tampa Bay now has added Jason Garrison and Strawman to their defense, which has long been their weak spot. I still think, with Hedman now, I think and Matt Carl, it's probably a little better than it was, but I still think that is their weak spot. I mean, Ben Bishop covered up a lot of problems with that team, with how he played last year, and once he went down and Anders Lindbach was in goal, you could see how far along, or not how far along, the Lightning are. So at least, go ahead.
tie. Andre Mazzaras is another guy who's out there still. I know you had a brief in. He was as a Flyer. I want to know what your thoughts were of him as a Bruin.
Very uninspiring. There were times where he would look like a solid defenseman, and other times where it looked like he was sleepwalking for an entire game. And I felt that was how the team felt about him as well by the end of it. This was a guy that was benched for Matt Bartkowski in the playoffs, despite the fact that Bartkowski was taking bad penalties and he wasn't as strong as he should have been.
Exactly.
So Mazzaros, he just looked sleepy. That's the best way to describe it. He looked sleepy, and I don't know if his work ethic was exactly what the Bruins liked. I know that they did emphasize the fact that it took him some time to sort of develop, I guess best way to put it, coming from Philadelphia's defensive system to Boston's. They felt that he would have had a bit more of a solid contribution to the team had he been there earlier, because they were really trying to get him immersed on the fly, which doesn't really work out with Boston's system, especially if you're a defenseman.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting experiment, but it was definitely a failure. But I think that he has the goods to contribute somewhere as a 4 or a 5. He's not a 3 like the Bruins wanted him to be.
Right.
But he does have some offensive flair for sure.
He had his moments in Philly where there was like 1 week during the regular season where he was the best player on the team for an entire week. It was the strangest thing. He would just have these moments where, and it always had, to me, with him, it always had to do with when he was pinching. Like as a pinching defender, when he would actually go and try to keep the puck in the zone, he was very good at that, and that was his. He was really good at creating offense. He was good at rushing the puck. He was good at joining the play on rushes. And that was always his strength, but when he tried to be more of a stay-at-home type guy, he sort of would vanish and would be invisible, and would get beaten a lot. And
Yeah.
I'm very curious how he's going to turn out through this UFA period.
Yeah, especially when you see the money that's going around. He is a nice option if you swing and miss on one of these puck movers that have been out there, like to a lesser degree Boyle, for example. If you want someone who can contribute, it doesn't have to be Brian Boyle, but he can help your power play, your second unit. He's a guy.
Right, and he's a lot less. We can make a lot less money than those. Than those
exactly.
Players. So that's not a bad one. I think. I don't know. There's all sorts. I've always been a fan of his, and I think that and even in the Olympics, he was a heck of a player for them as well. So. But the other name we haven't heard much of today. Let me see if I'm right about this or not before I say anything. Is David Legwan, right? Who I think is probably Nashville are sitting there right now and they need a center and Legwan's out there. I'm curious if he hadn't been from Nashville for all those years, if the Predators wouldn't be looking at Legwan really seriously right now, because he is the kind of guy that they probably need. Tampa's in on him though. I do know that, and Minnesota I've heard is in on Legwan too. So I keep an eye on him. And the other guy is I've heard too Derek Roy's name mentioned with the Wild, and Roy has some connections also with Vanek, of course, having played with him, and that would be sort of putting that line back, a line that I think once played together in Buffalo, right?
Right. That's yep.
In Pominville, Roy, and Vanek. Yeah. So the other guy we haven't heard anything about is Ville Leno, bought out, of Buffalo, and probably is going to have to take a tryout with somebody. That's what I was told. I'm trying to think.
Maybe Colorado.
Right. I've heard Dustin Penner's name mentioned with Winnipeg. It's another one too. Dustin Penner has not been talked about today.
For the Boston Bruins right now, one of the things that they're going to be looking for with a replacement for Iginla, if they can get one, is the fact that they want a guy who has a right-handed shot. They love the way that it blended on that first line with Lucic, Krejci, and Iginla. Krejci loved having that right-handed shot there. So, we talked about Heatley, for example. A guy like Heatley is a left-handed shot. So I don't know if he'd necessarily fit exactly what they want. But it is an option. They make it work, it seems, no matter what it is. But that's something to consider. That's why Radim Vrbata is such an intriguing option for them, is the fact that he is a right-handed shot, and he could definitely play with Krejci. That's not even a question.
Yeah. Vrbata would be a great fit in Boston, I think. I would. he's been solid. You know, in Phoenix, he has had issues when he hasn't been a Phoenix Coyote. Like he's been inconsistent when he hasn't been. But yeah, it's hard to imagine. The Buffalo's got such a good system playing there that I think it would work really well for him.
Mhm.
He's a good fit. We talked about Bobby Ryan earlier today, and like I said, I think I just got a tweet. Someone asked me about Bobby Ryan again, and I think Bobby Ryan's, in my estimation, is more of a trade deadline.
Yeah.
Ty, another right shot that could be out there, and he could fit into a nice little 1-year deal is Devin Setaguchi. So he's a right shot. He looked like a guy who coming off of scoring goals in San Jose was going to come to Minnesota and be a goal scorer. It didn't necessarily happen. We didn't feel like he got a great shake here, but he struggled in Winnipeg, and now he's out there. He could fit into the Bruins' plans and be that right shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is they have the depth. They have the depth to get by. It's talking about taking that next level. What can push them, past the second round? This team is a team that wants to win now. Chara will be 38 next year. Tuukka Rask, this is the prime of Tuukka Rask's career, I think. So they don't want to waste these years, especially with guys like Bergeron. You never know what can happen with Bergeron because of the style he plays and because of his concussion history. You need to capitalize on this window right now.
That's a great point. Another team we haven't talked about all today, a little bit, but not really, and the team that just has, lost players, in my opinion, and really gone backwards are the Pittsburgh Penguins. We talked about them a little bit earlier, but you'd think they'd have to be an Verbatta here, but I haven't heard that they are. That would be a player that I would think they would go. I mean, they've lost Jokinen, they're about to lose Niskanen.
Yeah.
I mean, they
traded Neal.
I mean, they're the second best team in the conference behind Boston, and yet they lost. They're losing 2 of their top players, and not making any changes. They lost Neal, right? Hornquist, I think, will score more than Neal did in Pittsburgh, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think that's a great trade for them and for both teams actually. But I have to think that Verbatta is an option for Pittsburgh too, but that seems like the kind of player they would go for.
You got to remember, I mean, Dupuis was out for most of the year with the injury. He's gonna be back, so it'll be him and Kunitz with Crosby. Probably Hornquist fits on the line with Malkin, and again, I still think that what's going to happen is that Nikolai Kuhlman's going to sign in Pittsburgh and play alongside Malkin. So your top 6 is probably taken care of there. Their focus has been to add quality depth on the bottom 6. I mean, the Spalling addition in the deal for Neal. I mean, Spalling will probably be on their bottom 6 and be effective, but they need to add some guys who can contribute something. They have Sutter there; they have to sign him as an RFA, and they did bring Ehrhoff in. So, I mean, I think they've made a few moves, but I think there will be moves to come. But they have to be cost-effective moves.
Gentlemen, also, I think the thing that Shiro doesn't get credit for is he added a lot of young players to that organization. And in their pipeline, they have a lot of young players that are ready to contribute. They have Bo Bennett, they have the Derek Pouliot, they have Simone Depress. They're strong with blue line prospects that are very close to contributing. I got to watch a lot of Pouliot when Dumbo went to Portland to the Winterhawks, and I think Derek Pouliot's very close to being NHL ready to try out.
Yeah, Pouliot's going to be in their top 6 next year.
Yeah, no, I'm also hearing that it is possible that Tampa still could get Niskanen. I was just texted that, even though they got Stroman. So that would be a big boost. I mean, we're looking at some teams that have done a lot and some teams that have done very little.
Well, have we heard anything more on the Phaneuf possibility? Just that it's being on hold until Niskanen is.
No, not yet. I think Washington is in on Niskanen. My guess right now would be Washington, San Jose, Tampa, Colorado. But it's still like I was sort of thinking that Niskanen would take a while because, like I said, it was many teams, and now it's still. And whoever doesn't get Niskanen, that's where you'll see Del Zotto go to. That's my opinion. I think Del Zotto is the domino after Niskanen.
So you don't think Phaneuf is in the mix then?
No, I think Phaneuf's in the mix as well, but only to certain teams.
Okay.
So not every team, and I don't think all those teams would go for him. I don't think that would be the case. But
I would love to have Phaneuf in Minnesota paired with Suter. That would make me very happy, gentlemen.
Well, send us Granlund or Charlie Coyle, and then we'll talk.
And then that's when Chuck Fletcher hangs up the phone.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. And the Leafs need to get something. They're not going to give away a defenseman who's an all-star for nothing just because he's signed to a contract that's probably a little pricey. I think, especially in this market, if you're paying Brooks Orpik $5.5 million, then $7 million isn't pricey for Dion Phaneuf.
What about Eric Howla or Jason Zucker in a package with like Spurgeon or?
I think the Leafs are going to be looking for forwards back for top tier.
I wouldn't trade Halla for anything, man. I mean, Zucker I like too, but Halla, I think you got to keep on. I think you got to hold on to them. I have heard Ribero's name mentioned again with the Blackhawks. Thrown out there too.
That's if Brad Richards doesn't make.
That's without Brad Richards. I mean, kind of, they're both good fits for that. They're both, I mean, for lack of a better word, Handzus-esque to a degree. They're picking up an older center who can play two ways. Verbata.
Kyprios is reporting the delay with Niskanen is a steep asking price, pales in comparison to the Lightning deal for Strawman. Some NHL teams priced out.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean that Strawman contract, that's a game changer. I mean, if you're a defender, I mean that guy was widely considered the second, third best defenseman on the market. So for him to sign for that, I mean that's a good price for Tampa, and it changes the game for if you're bidding for Niskanen. Why would you pay that? A 7x7 when you just saw Strawman sign for that? So yeah, I could see him pricing himself out with a few teams for sure there too.
Yeah.
Just to keep in perspective how good Strawman's contract is, he's only getting less than $1 million more than Clayton Stoner got from Anaheim.
Yeah.
Well, Strawman has had, when you talk to people in New York, I talked to a lot of people in New York about Strawman after, his famous moment of Game 4, stopping the puck on the goal line, and they were, they all said that they really didn't see Strawman as a top 4 defense. It was pretty unanimous. They say he's a good player, but not a top 4, and so I don't know.
And Strawman's a guy that after the season was done, the analytics community championed him as being the most effective blue liner for that New York Rangers squad. And
I know.
Which again shows the fallacy that analytics have anything to do with the effectiveness of a player. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, I thought Anton Strawman is a pretty good defenseman. But if you tell me that he's a better defenseman or more effective defenseman than Ryan McDonough, then you've dipped into some of the hallucinogens. Because there's no Anton Strawman is an above average right-hand shot defenseman who is pretty mobile, who's an effective guy, and he got a pretty decent contract today from Tampa. He's not on the same stratosphere as Ryan McDonough. So if he has better Corsi-Fenwick numbers, that is just proof that Corsi and Fenwick is full of crap.
Wow, and so we see it here. We see it here with Ryan Suter playing 30 minutes a game, and then his numbers dip, and somebody has better numbers. So did they perform better than Ryan Suter? And that's not the case. But identifying a player that can move the puck like Strawman and possess it and drive possession and stuff, I think there is something to that. And then, I think Tampa Bay signed him to a good contract.
Right, that's for sure. Well, it's almost 3 o'clock, guys. I think that as much as I'd like to sit here and wait for Niskanen to be traded,
or signed, yeah.
Or signed, or what have you. Yeah, I think we should call it because this is a good 4-hour shift for everybody. And it was great stuff, though. And Ty, thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate it.
Hey, anytime.
Really great. And Tony, same with you, man.
I appreciate you allowing me to cyberstalk you and allowing me to be a contributor.
Anytime. So those of you who don't watch all the time, the Hockey Buzzcast is on Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock usually. So it's 1 to 2 o'clock. and we have a lot of people watching today. Like, I think the one time I thought we were up to like 3,500 people at once here. So you can follow Ty Anderson. Where you're at Ty Anderson, right?
Well, at _ Ty Anderson. You tweeted at some kid from New Jersey, and then he tweeted back at me, and he said, "I think you're a hockey writer," because I get a lot of tweets.
Fix that.
Yeah, _ Ty Anderson. Yeah, no problem.
I'm going to send out a tweet with both you guys on it. And Tony, you are
At Tony Dean, all one word, THW. Tony Dean.
THW. Got it. And Mike, you're at Mike in Buffalo. So
Mike in Buffalo.
Yep. So we're on every Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock, and we're going to keep going. We're going to talk about teams, and we're going to talk about there's still going to be free agents. There's still trades to be made. There's lots still going on. We're not done by any stretch of the imagination. We have a really busy 4 hours. That's for sure.
Yeah, and for all Leaf fans, I will be updating my blog in a few minutes. Too busy concentrating on the webcast to be updating things, but I'll do that pretty soon.
Yeah, that's why I kind of want to end the cast, because I've got it. Now it's getting to the point that after the big guys are gone, now you really have to do some calling around and figure out what's going on here. So,
yep.
See how this all plays out. And of course, Nino Niskanen will be traded the second we get off, but or signed the second we get off. But thanks, guys. We'll talk soon. Enjoy the soccer game, for crying out loud. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey talk. To you then.